In Animal Crossing New Horizons, there were 418 villagers, but in the entire Animal Crossing franchise, there are 488 villagers. Each character has something unique about them, whether it's the lore behind how they got their name, what's going on in their house, what their ambitions are. It's actually really interesting how deep this rabbit hole goes. If only there was one place where you could learn everything about the Animal Crossing villagers in like a cool video where you could just kick back and relax. Wouldn't that be neat? Well, that's exactly what we're doing here. We're looking at all 488 villagers. This video is going to take forever to make, but we're doing it. No waiting around. Ready, set, go. Just like our very own universe, everything starts with Alfonso. Originally, Alfonso used to wear a Mario shirt, but that would later change. It is possible that they chose an Italian name in the localization for this character as kind of like a play on Mario. I mean, his little like motto saying thing literally was "It's a me" originally. Allie's kind of an interesting character, the only snooty alligator villager out of all of Animal Crossing whose name probably originates from alligator. I mean, I guess that makes sense. Technically, in other languages, it originates from crocodile, so we don't really know if Allie's an alligator or a crocodile. Her Japanese name is Kuroko, which is like croco. There is an eagle with the name Amelia, which very likely is, a play on the name Amelia Earhart. She was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. Continuing the ongoing trend of Animal Crossing villagers being named after like events or people, Apollo, another eagle villager, likely named after the Apollo missions, which were, the missions to the moon back in the 60s and 70s. Then there's Anchovy. I'm pretty sure he's just named after the fish that certain birds eat, and that's it. Next is Aurora, and in a lot of cold environments, Aurora Borealis are those like colorful night skies, and usually you see them in a lot of northern areas. I think they're in like the south too, like the South Pole. Since penguins can live in these cold climates, I think that's where the name kind of stems from. We got Barbara, which is a sheep. It's a play on what sheep sound like, guys. And then there's Bill. He has a duck bill. That's it. As cool as Biscuit is, I'm pretty sure he's just named after like a dog treat. So, I mean, good. Then there's Blair, who might just be named after the fact that she's just a black squirrel. Though some people do point out that she kind of resembles a skunk, maybe. Then we have Blue Bear, who's just straight up a blue bear, whose catchphrase, interestingly enough, is Peach, which maybe is like a reference to the fact that her name, Blue Bear, kind of sounds like blueberry, so it's like fruit, and having another fruit as a name. It might be a bit of a stretch. I don't know. Next up is Bob, and he's just a purple cat. He's probably a play off of like a bobcat, for example, but I mean, that's just me, but an OG villager just chilling out here. Do you remember Biscuit from earlier? How he was named after the dog treat of Biscuit? Well, here's Bones. Can you guys guess what he's named after? I'm pretty sure the villager Buck is just named straight up after what horses are known to do. Okay, wait, real quick. Don't worry, we have hundreds of villagers still coming up in this video. This video took forever, and I needed a lot of help to make this video, but fortunately, we do have a sponsor. What's the best way to turn your friends into frenemies? Monopoly Go. It's your favorite board game, now reimagined for your phone with no cleanup required. Roll the dice, pass go, and start building your empire. Along the way, you'll raid friends' banks, shut down their landmarks, and maybe, just maybe, team up and trade stickers and unlock massive rewards. Who would have known your closest friends could also be your biggest rivals, and it's all part of the fun. And right now, you don't want to miss the exclusive January events. Dig into Tundra Treasures, a frosty adventure to uncover glowing gems and unlock the adorable Walrus token. And let's not forget the Plushie Partners event. Team up to craft cozy, cuddly toys and earn rewards like the Sledding Husky token. With Monopoly Go, every roll is a chance to outsmart your friends, strategize, and share laughs in a game full of nostalgia and twists. It's chaotic, competitive, and endlessly entertaining. Whether you're sabotaging your friends or teaming up to hit new milestones, it's a good time, so what are you waiting for? Download Monopoly Go for free now and experience the unique take on the classic game. Monopoly Go is here to add more fun, so let the games begin. Now let's get back into things. Bunny, just a literal bunny rabbit. Yeah, some names like this where it's just really, really very obvious what it is. Not as interesting, but still, I mean, how can you hate Bunny? Butch, on the other hand, a little bit more interesting. There's more lore, there's more questions as to what his deal is. Now, Butch's name might actually originate as like a play on the name Butch Cassidy, who was a criminal from like Wyoming and stuff. I don't know, he was super notorious. He was like a bank robber, highway thief, all of that. And you might think like, man, isn't that kind of weird? Animal Crossing would name a villager after like a criminal from 1900? Maybe, but this isn't the only case of like Animal Crossing villagers getting names from like wild sources. So let's keep going for now. But yeah, Butch, what a guy. Okay, what do you get if you get camouflage and then you like wrap up a frog in the camouflage? We get camo frog. Literally, as the name suggests, a camouflage frog. Caesar's a little more interesting. You know, we have a monkey villager, a gorilla villager. I don't know my primates very well. His name originates from the 1960s movie Planet of the Apes, where one of the main apes is Caesar. I think when they did the whole like reboot series, they reused the name Caesar again. But yeah, that's where it originally comes from, because this villager technically existed before the reboot series. But you guys get what I mean. Interestingly enough, if you've watched the Japanese Animal Crossing anime, he's friends with Cyrano, who's another cranky Animal Crossing villager. So we definitely know that they get together and just like talk trash about the rest of the villagers in the town. 100%. There's no way that doesn't happen. Cyrano, on the other hand, looks like this, and he's the only anteater that has a cranky personality. His name is probably a reference to Cyrano de how do I say that?
Cyrano de Bergerac.
Which was a French play where the main character has a large nose. And then look at our boy Cyrano here. Definitely does have the large nose going for him. Also, his Japanese name, Sakurajima, refers to a volcano in Japan that has the same name. Next up is Chèvre, which means goat in French, and her catchphrase is la ba, which is like ba, but you know, spicy as if it's French. So it's like the whole la ba. Also, Nan's photo over here, kind of interesting. And if we look at Nan, on the other hand, another Animal Crossing villager, she has a picture of Chèvre, and we've talked about this in another video, but like their rooms are like mirror negative versions of each other. So that's pretty cool. Look at these besties here. Nan's name and catchphrase may also originate from nanny, another word for a female goat, and kid, like a baby goat. There also might be like a nursery song inspired by these two. And also, if you look at the e-reader card profile for City Folk or Nan's Pocket Camp description, they establish that Nan is pen pals with Chèvre. So that confirms the fact they're friends here. This is funny because that nursery song we were just talking about is about a black goat and a white goat sending letters to each other, but they keep eating the letters before they have a chance to read them. Chief is pretty interesting here. His name might originate from a popular misconception that wolves live in packs led by like one alpha male, sometimes referred to as a chief. However, that's not necessarily the case always, but we still have a villager named Chief, and it's definitely Chief, not Chef, which one of my friends continuously got wrong the entire time he had him as a villager. We got this guy Chow here, which his name actually probably comes from the Chinese word towards the sun, which is Chao Yang, which is probably a play on his pink sunburnt appearance. He also has fitness as his hobby in game, and if you look at his like poster, you could probably assume he's into martial arts of some sort. But yeah, wild villager. Always been kind of unsettled around Chow. Coco is interesting. There's a lot of theories as to what's going on with this villager. Is she part gyroid? Is she a coconut head? I don't know. I mean, it could be a reference to cocoa as in chocolate, and there's like chocolate bunnies, which are popular around Easter time. There's plenty of theories out there that this villager is based on Haniwa statues, which were the inspirations for gyroids. So we really don't know the origin, the true origin of this villager. What we do know is her face doesn't change whenever she has different expressions. She's kind of just an expressionless villager. Also in Japanese, Coco's name Yayoi can be a regular name, but it's also the historical era that is associated with the Haniwa clay figures. So, you know, maybe there's a stronger connection there than we first initially thought. Cube is another really interesting villager that I love, like where the naming origin or like the double play with this character could have come from. Now, he's a penguin, and they obviously could have named him Cube based on like ice cubes, you know, something cold. Penguins live in the cold. His catchphrase was brain freeze, so that kind of ties together as something you could have with, you know, like an ice cube happen. But also, originally, he used to wear a GameCube logo on his shirt, so another play on a cube as well. Now, his Japanese name, Bisu, refers to V, the French word for screw, which could be relating to his eyes that kind of resemble like the tops of screws. There's a lot going on with this guy. Maybe the Animal Crossing villager Nibbles has gotten a bit of a bad rap over the years. For whatever reason, Nibbles is an interesting character because on the official Animal Crossing e-reader, it says, "It's funny how no matter what they say, some animals just seem to get on your nerves." I guess they're insinuating that Nibbles could just be really annoying. I don't know. Nibbles isn't getting the respect that she deserves. And then her name obviously is probably a play on how squirrels eat, like they nibble. See? Get it? Octavian is one of the rarer octopus squid villagers, something that's not as commonplace across all Animal Crossing games. His name probably is a play on literally octopus, with his name being Octavian. Caribbean. I feel like that one's pretty obvious. He does have an interesting moon-themed house interior, which could be maybe a subtle reference to like the octopus-like aliens from the radio show and movie and book. I think there's a video game too. The War of the Worlds? I don't know. I just remember watching the old Tom Cruise one from like 2005 as a kid. That movie was wild. Next, we have Olivia, who's a snooty cat villager. And you might notice that she's got like this makeup going on. She has like a beauty mark. And these traits are actually really common for snooty villagers. And her favorite saying in older games used to be, "You're the best kind of friend because you make me look even prettier," which just is like a throwback to when Animal Crossing villagers would just be kind of mean. It's such an interesting thing that's slowly been phased out of Animal Crossing, that these mean villagers were a commonplace thing, but nowadays people kind of miss them. It's like bully me some more Animal Crossing characters, but we don't get that too much in New Horizons. Next up is Curly, which is probably a reference to his original Curly tail. However, his name could also be a reference to the comedian Curly Howard, because Curly's catchphrase is "Nyoink," which is a mix of oink, but also maybe like a play on the comedian Curly Howard's iconic laugh, which kind of sounds like "nyuk, nyuk, nyuk." Here, listen to this. Yeah, I guess my impression wasn't the best there, but you guys get what I mean. We have Daisy here, who is like a fossil maniac, like just a huge fan of fossils. She's got fossils in her house. She probably just like thinks about fossils all day. Her old e-reader card actually said she wants to become a paleontologist, and in New Leaf, it seemed like she wanted to be an archaeologist. She's changing career paths, but only slightly. She had a hobby in Wild World of digging up fossils, and she has fossils in every single house that she's ever had prior to New Horizons. There also might be like a play going on here with like her hobby being all about that, because like dogs like to dig stuff up, so you know, a little double joke there. But here's a side-by-side comparison of Daisy's house in Animal Crossing New Leaf and Daisy's house in Animal Crossing New Horizons. As you can see on the New Leaf side, the house is beautiful, it's unique, it showcases her interests, and on the New Horizons side, the house is kind of basic. There are no fossils here, and it's boring and sad. Also, it's worth noting that Daisy's catchphrase is "bow wow," which is a song that dogs make, but it also emphasizes the wow that other villagers sometimes do. Like Tabby will say "me wow," and Hazel says "uni wow" because of the unibrow. More on those two later on in this video. We are too busy talking about Dina right now, whose Japanese name, Marimo, is a type of algae. In Wild World, she said that she's not a lame duck, but I mean, have you seen Dina? Okay, we got Derwin, though, who I feel like they were trying to set him up to be like a nerd character. You know, his like interests whenever you're trying to like design a house for him in Happy Home Paradise or Designer. He talks about his love of comic books and having the perfect place to study. In Japan, his name is Bon, like Bon, which can sometimes be translated to goody two-shoes. And his Japanese catchphrase actually means "right, mom?" like a question mark, hinting that he might be like a mama's boy or something. Also, is this picture his prom photo? What's going on here? Did his mom take his photo? Also, Derwin's picture looks really similar to Pudge's picture, so maybe the same photographer took the picture for their individual schools, but Pudge is wearing like a uniform for a school where Derwin at least has the full-on tux. I don't know. I'm kind of judging Pudge for underdressing for the event, but I digress for now. Pudge, on the other hand, is a little bit interesting. His Japanese name Kinzo is a reference to Kintaro, a character from Japanese folklore who was raised on a mountain and became friends with the native animals like bears, and he's like often depicted alongside bears and whatnot. So it makes sense that he's a bear here. As far as why he has the name that he has in English, I don't know. He's like a pudgy bear. Do we need more of an explanation? Then next on our list, we have Dizzy, the elephant. Dizzy's Pocket Camp description says that he has an appetite of enormous proportions. His Japanese name is literally just huge. Kind of did him dirty, didn't they? Dang. And he's one of the 4 villagers who appeared in Animal Crossing Sweet Day, which was a mini game in the Wii U game Nintendo Land. That whole like weird Animal Crossing fever dream. Okay, next we have the mouse Dora, whose favorite saying is "the squeaky wheel gets the cheese," which is a reference like the saying "the squeaky wheel gets the grease." Her name might also be a reference to dormice. It's a type of mouse. Okay, Dottie is up next, and her name could be a reference to her peppy personality, as Dottie can mean like eccentric in some ways. It could be the black patches on her fur. Also, she has like a moon-themed house in some of the older games like Wild World and City Folk, which is probably a reference to the Japanese myth of a moon rabbit, which is that on the dark side of the moon, it looks like a rabbit making mochi. This becomes kind of interesting because there's actually a lot of rabbit villagers that have like space or moon-themed homes. If you look at Carmen, Myra, Ruby, or Sasha wanted it for Happy Home. We'll talk about these guys a bit more later. We gotta talk about Egbert, whose name is likely a pun on eggs since he's a chicken. His Pocket Camp description states states that his dazed expression and bags under his eyes are because of his tendency to stay up too late. Egbert, you look a little paranoid. I don't know. Elmer is a rough one. I don't know. It's very likely this name is a reference to the Elmer Horse Collection, a company that makes horse figurines, or it's a reference to Elmer's glue, since glue's made from... I don't know. What up, Eloise? Her name comes from the English word elephant. It's pretty much the same in most languages. If she doesn't live on the player's island and isn't visiting the campsite, she'll actually be the first client in Happy Home Paradise, asking for a nice, quiet place where she can read in peace. So, tutorial character. Next up, we have Filbert, who's the only lazy squirrel villager. His name is reference to Filbert nuts, which is another name for hazelnuts. But in Japan, Korea, and Chinese, his name is Ricky. I don't know. If anyone knows why, let us know. Also, I don't know if this is worth noting, but Filbert, Peanut, and Ricky all have similar triangles on their forehead, which could reflect a chipmunk's little fur pattern that they typically have. We got Frigga, whose name originates from frigid, and her catchphrase and house interior also relate to liking the cold. Not too much going on here. Also, Gabby is a villager and is the only villager in New Leaf to have the goal of being a pianist. She has a piano in every home prior to New Horizons, but for New Horizons, she doesn't have that. Also, her Happy Home requests involve pianos. So if you have her in your house in New Horizons, I think it's only fair that you gift her a piano because, don't let dreams be dreams. Okay, next we gotta talk about Freckles, who, interestingly enough, much like how Daisy has this ongoing theme of fossils, Freckles has a fish theme. Her Japanese name is Maguro, meaning tuna. She has tunas in her New Leaf and New Horizons houses, and the tuna item is unlocked after doing her Happy Home designer request, and her request in Happy Home Paradise, also fish themed. Also, her Animal Crossing New Leaf and Happy Home designer house both have fish shaped smoke plumes. Her Wild World starting hobby is fishing, and finally her star sign is of course Pisces. Next we have Gaston, whose name is French and has the catchphrase mon cho, which means my dear. His favorite saying used to be sac Sacre bleu in Wild World, but this was most likely changed as it could be considered a swear word in French, so we have that going on for it. His Japanese name is Mosakichi, which comes from Mosa, meaning fierce man, and similarly his Chinese name translates to fierce rabbit. Next we have Genji, and Genji's name could be a reference to the historical Genji era of Japan, or the titular character in The Tale of Genji by Murasaka Shikibu, which is often considered to be the world's first novel. That's kind of interesting. His design also reflects a Japanese nobleman, like Genji from the novel. His catchphrase otaku is both a term of disapproval for people with life-consuming interests, and in English is sometimes used by fans of Japanese media. It kind of means like nerd or geek, I guess. His official e-reader profile and Pocket Camp description all refer to his love of writing poetry, specifically haikus. He also is said to love running races with Aziz, who is another jock villager. And then we got Goldie, who's, just like a golden retriever. Her name is Kyaremeru, which is the Japanese pronunciation for caramel, referring to her golden brown fur. And her Chinese name means milk candy. Also, her German name means little honeybee. Okay, we gotta look at this Goose Kenta situation because, first of all, is he a goose or is he a chicken? Like, what are you, dude? His Japanese name, Kenta, is likely a reference to Kentucky Fried... Yikes. He definitely solidified himself on the wall of shame for villagers that are named after an animal being dead. Next, we have Gwen, and her name is actually really creative. It's just, if you think about it, Penguin. Gwen, that's it. Her Japanese name is Pora, which is the Japanese pronunciation for both Paula and Polar. So there's like a little play on words there. Okay, now we got Hopper, and he's the only cranky penguin villager. His name and appearance are a reference to rock hopper penguins, and he does show up in that little Animal Crossing anime we talked about earlier. Just kind of chilling there fishing. All right, now we got Hugh, and his Pocket Camp description and Happy Home designer request both state that he loves eating and sleeping and not much else. His Japanese name, Kucheni, literally means do nothing but eating and sleeping. So, I mean, I guess like he lives up to the expectation here. His French and Italian names both derive from a piece of pig meat. Ugh, not another one, dang. Seems like we have like this inversion or interesting conspiracy theory happening with some blue villagers like Jeremiah, we got Hugh, and also Cody to an extent. Look at the like blue with another blue, going on. Okay, now we have Jeremiah, who is a bullfrog, which is likely a reference to the song Joy to the World by Three Dog Night, which features the lyric, Jeremiah was a bullfrog.
Jeremiah was a bullfrog!
Alright, now we got this dude Cody over here. His name originates likely from a Kodiak bear, but his Japanese name is Idaho, which is a reference to bears found in the state of Idaho. Jay, on the other hand, is a lot less interesting. His name originates from the bird species that is literally a blue jay, but his Japanese name and design are instead derived from two types of swallow. He likely gets his forked tail from the barn swallow and his coloration from the wire-tailed swallow. And then there's Joey, whose design features a sumo loincloth, and his goal in New Leaf was to become a sumo wrestler. Also, his name in Japanese, Korean, and Chinese is Richard. We don't know why. Also, it's worth noting that if you look at Joey specifically, there might be some more going on here, as there is a specific like desk furniture item found in Animal Crossing and Dobutsu no Mori E+ that has Joey and Mallory's name written on it with a heart on it. So who knows what's going on here? Maybe there are a couple. Maybe there was a crush going on. I don't know. Mallory's another interesting Animal Crossing villager. Her name likely originates from a mallard, which is a type of duck, and her catchphrase is quack, which might suggest she has a lisp or something. I don't know why it's that. Kabuki's an interesting character. He's named after the traditional Japanese kabuki plays, where actors would wear elaborate kumadori makeup, and you can kind of see that translated into his design himself. His catchphrase is Mio, which is a mix of meow, and Iyo, which is a famous kabuki shout. Then we have Kiki, who's likely designed and referencing Kiki's Delivery Service, which is a pretty solid movie if you've never seen it. It's about a coming of age of a witch who has to go like live on her own for a while, and she has a black cat, and I think they took the name of the witch and made a cat character based off the black cat, called her Kiki. It's pretty cool. I think I like that. Pocket Camp gave the description that Kiki frequently has bad luck, which is kind of a reference to the superstition about black cats bringing bad luck. Then we have Kit, and his name probably just comes from pocket, like they have a pouch where they can keep like a little kit in it. It's like a double play here. Her catchphrase used to be, "They say that ugly parents have ugly kids," but it was changed to "funny parents have funny kids." So maybe that's like two parts of a saying, you know? Ugly parents have ugly kids, funny parents have funny kids. I don't know. I like the first one better, to tell you the truth. Opal's name and design refer to the gemstone. All of her attributes, from the snooty personality to her design and descriptions, show that she is kind of glamorous and loves attention, so I guess this makes sense. Pango's interesting. Their name originates from pangolins, which are kind of known as like a scaly anteater. Her Japanese name is Patora, as in like Patra from Cleopatra, which reflects the ancient wall wallpaper that's seen in her poster, and maybe how she's dressed. Its name might actually originate from a meat spread that's made from the liver of duck. Oh geez. Her design makes her appear to be frowning, but according to her Pocket Camp description, this is misleading because she's actually very excitable and cheerful. But who knows? I'd be terrified too if I was gonna be turned into like a duck paste. Patty, the cow, I mean, come on now. Even her Japanese name, Karupi, is a pun on karubi, which means ribs or grilled ribs. So this is definitely a food villager. Her catchphrase is "how now," which is a reference to the phrase "how now, brown cow," which is sometimes used when children are learning vowel sounds, famously known as the "how now, brown cow" vowels. We got Peanut here. The name's kind of self-explanatory, I think. Way back in the day, they did a villager popularity poll on the Dobutsu no Mori website. She actually ended up ranking in as number 1. Also, her Pocket Camp description may be a reference to this, as it says the results of a poll from 50 animals voting on the best thing about Peanut. Pecan is another villager whose name originates from a nut because she's a squirrel. Then we have Pee-wee, both his name and catchphrases Lil Dude and Lil Bitty Baby, ironic because gorillas are typically big. The Japanese name is Danberu, as in dumbbell, but despite this, his personality is cranky, not jock. Next we have Pierce, and his name and catchphrase, Hawkeye, may originate from the 70s and 80s American TV series MASH, whose main character was Benjamin Hawkeye Pierce. Pinky's catchphrase "wah" and Japanese catchphrase "wow" may be a reference to how the Japanese term for the sound a panda makes, wan. Her Japanese name Tantan means peaceful in Chinese, probably because pandas are native to China. Then we have Pippi, whose name probably came from her peppy personality. According to Pocket Camp's description, she loves taking baths. The more you know about Pippi. Then we have Pom Pom, whose name and catchphrase, which is "rah rah," originates originate from likely cheerleaders. I don't know why, but that's what they went with. Lily is a frog Animal Crossing villager who's appeared in every mainline Animal Crossing game, along with every spin-off Animal Crossing game as well. Lily's name likely originates from the phrase like lily pad, which frogs like to chill on. And while in the first Animal Crossing game, her catchphrase was like ZZR Ribbit or whatever, it was later swapped with Ribbits to become Toady instead. In the Japanese versions of Animal Crossing, her name is Rainy, as in the phrase like rainy, since frogs seem to like rain. Pretty cool. Also, depending on what language you play Animal Crossing in, the name Lily can be used with other Animal Crossing villagers as well. Like for instance, in the Japanese, South Korean, and Chinese version of Animal Crossing, Sky has the name Lily. In Germany, Claudia has the name Lily. And in France, Tammy has the name Lily instead. Another OG villager from the beginning is Limburg, whose name originates from Limburger cheese, which is known for having a strong odor. Now in Japan, his name is Rakyo, which means like a Chinese onion, another food that's known for having a strong smell. His catchphrase is squinky, which might be a mix of the words squeak and stinky, which might lead us to the conclusion that this guy reeks. Next on our list is Lobo, and his name is the Spanish and Portuguese word for wolf. Now, his Spanish and German name actually end up being Lupo, which is the Italian word for wolf. And according to Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, he likes to dig up dirt on people and gossip, although he seems to mean well. I don't know how those two things go together. Lucky is definitely a fan favorite Animal Crossing character, and his name is ironic because his appearance makes him look like he's in a bunch of bandages and maybe is injured severely. He also could be designed off of a mummy as well. His favorite saying seems to be ow, which is clever because he's wrapped in bandages. Now, back in the day, there was an official Animal Crossing website called The Crossing Guardian. It's not around anymore, but back in the day, they gave Lucky a weird explanation for all of his bandages, saying that he was involved in a bizarre fishing accident involving a hook and two bass. Other than this, back in the day, Nintendo's never addressed what happened to Lucky and why he's in the state that he's in. Also, interestingly enough, in Animal Crossing New Leaf, apparently he's afraid of the mummy mask, which is kind of funny because he almost looks like a mummy himself. And Lucky and one other villager, Ione, are the only non-robot villagers that can glow in the dark. Next, we have the villager Lucy, who might be some sort of like piano star or something. The interior of her New Horizons house is set up like a piano concert, literally. So maybe this is a talent of hers, or maybe she's just like got a little bit of an ego or something. I don't know. Both Lucy's Happy Home requests for Happy Home Designer and Happy Home Paradise reference her love of collecting dolls, so that might be something else up her alley. But yeah, that's Lucy. Next on our list is Maple, whose name originates from maple trees, which, you know, could have like a light brown type of color to the wood, which is similar to her fur color. And her catchphrase is honey, which, you know, kind of plays into the whole thing about bears loving honey. So I can see the little play that they have going on here. Pretty clever. I do wonder if Maple is, you know, from Canada, but there's nothing in the lore suggesting that much other than her name. Matilda's an interesting Animal Crossing villager because we get into another elusive kangaroo villager, just because I still don't understand how the kangaroo lore works in Animal Crossing. Nonetheless, the name Matilda might come from the famous Australian song Waltzing Matilda, which makes sense because kangaroos and Australia go hand in hand. Similarly though, Waltzing Matilda could also be a double homage here, as there is another kangaroo villager with the name Walt. Now, her favorite saying used to be blood is thicker than water, but the word blood later would be censored and replaced with nail polish of all choices. Yeah, I think it's interesting that Walt is just relevant here. Maybe we know who the father of Matilda's child is. Maybe not. I hope Animal Crossing never starts doing that with their lore. Mint is a bit of an interesting Animal Crossing villager. The name is likely, you know, originating from the color of her fur, but at the same time, according to the OG e-reader back in the day, she used to be a brown squirrel, but became mint green after eating mints for several weeks. So here we are now. Next, we have Mitzi, the cat villager, who's from the OG Animal Crossing games as well, and her name might actually originate from like a play on the word mittens, you know, a popular cat name like Paws, and her design seems to be based off of a Siamese cat. Then we have Monique, whose name and design might be based on resembling Marilyn Monroe to some extent, though her Japanese name is Jane for some reason. I guess you could argue her character does resemble the same Jane from the King Kong movie from way back in 1933, and maybe that's where the name inspiration comes from for the Japanese localization. Now we're on to Poncho, whose name and design are both South American, one referring to the item of clothing and the other referencing the type of bear that looks like this. We have Portia, who's a Dalmatian, obviously. According to her description in Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, she worries a lot. Puddles, she's a frog. and frogs like puddles. She's also the only peppy frog villager in the game. Then we have Pearl, whose name is like a cat pun for the name Pearl, like Pearl. She's also a calico cat. Queenie's interesting. She used to have this like chess theme going on with her, where her name is a reference to the queen piece. Her house would have black and white chessboard themes with it. Weirdly enough, in Animal Crossing New Horizons, they stopped designing her house to have that theme or whatever. This is something that's happened actually a couple of times, and it's a shame that in the newer games they like forgot what the characters' interests were and they just changed things up. But yeah, Queenie falls into this along with other villagers like Daisy and Gabby. Then we have Rasher, which in the UK apparently is like a name for a piece of bacon. So another food-based name villager. Yikes. His Japanese name, Gureo, comes from Gureru, which is Japanese for like falling in with the wrong crowd. Next we have Ribbit, which is like a mix of Ribbit and Robot, which makes sense. He also has the number 59 on the back of his head, which might be a reference to the Luna 2 spacecraft, which was the first robotic spacecraft to land on the moon back in 1959. He's also one of 3 robot villagers, but is the only one to appear in every game so far, since Sprocket wasn't in Animal Crossing Wild World or City Folk. Check out our boy Rold here. He's a penguin, likely named after Roald Amundsen, who was a Norwegian polar explorer who led the first successful expedition to the South Pole. He also was the first person to reach both poles. Remember how we talked about Chevra and Nan, and they're like homies? We have another similar situation when we look at Twiggy and Robin here, as they seem to be like reflections of each other. Their houses and posters are opposite. Their Japanese names are Pichiku and Pachiku, which are like plays on the sounds that birds make. It seems like Twiggy's design is based off of a parakeet, and Robin's is based on an American thrush robin. The more you know. Then we got Rocco, who's actually the only hippo villager in Animal Crossing Wild World and the only hippo to appear in every single game. His outfit and happy home requests relate to his love of construction. All right, Rocco. Next, we're looking at Rolf, and no, his name doesn't stand for rolling on laughing floor. I feel like there might be a reference here, but I couldn't quite figure out what it was. So if you know, let us know. But his Japanese name, Chomoran, originates from this word,
Chomolangma,
which is the Tibetan name for Mount Everest. This also might be connected to Rolf's love of the outdoors. Next, we have Rosie, who is probably one of the main villagers that's not like a special villager that shows up in a lot of extra Animal Crossing related projects. Her name's likely a reference to her rosy cheeks. She also shows up as a major character in the Animal Crossing anime. She appears on a sticker in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, serving as the only regular animal villager to appear in the game. She also appears on the cover of stacked magazine items in New Leaf, suggesting she did finally make it and became famous at some point, and shows up again in the live action type trailer for Pocket Camp. Then there's Samson. He's literally just a mouse. Next, we're on Savannah, and her name and design derive from zebras since they kind of like live in the savannah. She's technically one of 2 horse villagers that aren't actually horses, fake horses, I guess. The other one being Julian, who's a unicorn, but still counts as a horse villager. Then we have Snake, which is like a play on the word sneak. I think he has this like little ninja theme going on for him. His little catchphrase though is Bunyip, which is a play on both his species name being like bunny, and Bunyip is like a snake-like monster in native Australian folklore. Next we have Static, who has this like theme of electricity as seen with their name and his design and pretty much everything else. His Japanese name is Supaku, which means spark, so literally this electricity vibe is carrying over too. Then we have Tabby, and oh my god, what is going on with Tabby's face? Tabby's name and design are based off of a tabby cat likely. Her right eye though is a little bit bigger than her left eye. I don't know if this is intentional or not, but it is consistent in every game. Tabby's mouth will stay as it is despite whatever expression she has. It might be weird, but you know, it makes the character a little quirky, a little original. Then we're on the cat Tangy, whose face is literally a tangerine. Tangerine cat here, Tangy. That's it. That's the character. Not many villagers have leaves on their head like Tangy does, but there is one other one, Tank, who's the only jock rhino, and he has a leaf on the back of his head, so why? I don't know. Then we have Teddy, who's a big teddy bear. His name is pretty self-explanatory. He's a jock villager, he loves lifting weights, and striped shirts apparently. Then we have Truffles, whose name comes from the spores, which are typically dug up by pigs. This haircut is not the best though. I don't know who did this. Harriet, they're fired. Now we have Vesta, who has this theme all around clothing, with her name being a play on vest, and her Japanese name, Meriyasu, meaning something knitted. All of her houses, except for New Horizons, contain clothing and a sewing machine, so once again another villagers whose aspirations in life were trampled by New Horizons, but we will digress and keep moving. Now we're on Wart Jr., whose name comes from toads having warts, but also might be a reference to the Nintendo character known mainly for his appearance all the way back in Super Mario Bros. 2. His Pocket Camp description basically says he's kind of a jerk. Walt Jr.'s biggest complaint is that no one can see past his whiny, unpleasant, and overly critical exterior to see the beautiful soul hiding underneath. So he's a jerk. Now we have Wolfgang, whose name is a play on the fact that he is literally a wolf. His Wild World quote used to say, "I could eat you for breakfast, short stack." Don't know what's going on there. That's threatening. And his Japanese name is Lobo, which is like the other wolf villager we talked about earlier. Now we have Yuka, who is the only snooty koala. Her name name is likely a play on eucalyptus, which koalas are known to eat. Tenji Sentai Mega Ranger is probably my favorite Japanese television series of all time, and the next 4 villagers are kind of based on Super Sentai as a whole, or in America, they took the fight scenes from the Japanese show and then casted American actors for in between and wrote a whole different plot, and that became Power Rangers. But with Super Sentai being a show that's run since the 70s in Japan, there is a little reference here in Animal Crossing to them, with the existence of the superhero-themed villagers. There's like 4.5 of them. Let's go through them real quick. There's Kid Cat, who's number 1, the red one, who's kind of like the leader of the team. Kid Cat likely being his superhero name, along with everyone else on the team. Agent S, who is the blue one, and he's the squirrel, and number 2 on the team. Big Top is the green-themed elephant here, likely a reference to Big Top Tents or whatever. And Rocket is the pink sisterly gorilla villager here. The only gorilla with the sisterly personality. I think it's interesting, though, that Kid Cat's official art has fire in the background. Agent S has speed in the background. Rocket has, like, water represented. And Big Top has, I don't know, food? What? Like, he eats a lot of food? Cool ability, bro. Now, much like how in the Sentai series, an extra member will sometimes be added to the team midway through, and it's kind of like a big deal. We briefly did get another numbered villager in the name of Philly, whose name comes from a female baby horse, but it was a part of a 7-Eleven collaboration, and I don't know, she had the number 7 on it. I mean, part of her just looks like a 7-Eleven employee, not a superhero, but she definitely has the superhero mask going on and the number 7 on her head, so I feel like this should count, but the confusing thing is there isn't like a number 5 or a number 6 for the superhero villagers yet either. I love the idea of 7-Eleven being an Animal Crossing, but yeah, I don't know what Philly's deal is. Being done with the superheroes, we can look at Alice, who likely is a reference to Alice Springs, Australia, since koalas are native to Australia. We have Angus, who's unfortunately likely a reference to Angus beef, though Aberdeen Angus is the name of the breed of cow, and then Angus beef came later, so it could go either way, but I'd like to think it's about Angus beef. Antonio seems pretty straightforward. He's an anteater, and his name's Antonio. It's like a play on the name. Avery is a play on like bird stuff. You know what I'm going at. Azalea is a rhino with a flower as her like nose thing, and I guess that makes sense because Azalea is the name of a flower. Becky is a chicken that has a beak. Becky beak. We have Bella, who is this like mouse looking thing. There's not a lot of information about as to why she has the name Bella. Her name does seem beautiful in Italian, I guess, but that could be just unrelated. Also, this villager has a hard time closing their eyes all the way, apparently. R.I.P. Benedict, who is likely named after Eggs Benedict, like the food. Next, we have Boyd. He's a gorilla. He has a sporty theme, like, preference, but I don't know what's going on inside of his New Horizons home. Bree is a mouse. Mice love cheese, and Bree is a type of cheese. Broccolo just is one of those villagers that looks like they're up to no good. I can't explain it. I don't know how to explain it, but you guys just have to take my word for it. His catchphrase is "eat it," which is kind of funny, but it might also be a reference to the fact that his name sounds like broccoli. People don't like to eat broccoli, so they like did a little double joke here. I don't know. Then we have Chabwick. I don't know why his name is this, but he wears earmuffs all day because his ears are cold. Also, his birthday is on Toy Day, kind of like how my birthday's on Christmas. Technically, it's one day before Christmas is Toy Day, but probably also gets forgotten about on his birthday. Then we get to Chrissy and Francine, who are actually sister villagers, something we don't see too much. Chrissy seems obsessed with polka dots, and Francine seems obsessed with having polka dots so that Chrissy will like the polka dots. I think one of these villagers likes polka dots maybe more than the other. Now, Chrissy is technically the younger of the two sisters, and according to Francine, Chrissy might be the more rowdy one, and she kind of takes care of her sometimes. Now we have Kurt. Nobody really knows why Kurt has this bandage on his forehead or what's going on here. He also used to have the quote, "I'm watching you," so he kind of seems like that stereotypical neighbor who's just like upset with everything going on in the neighborhood and just like watches judgingly from the window whenever you're doing anything outside. Next we have Del, who has this battleship themed with him. He might be a reference to the Delaware, which was like a popular ship in the US Navy. His Japanese name is Yamato, which is a Japanese battleship. Also, his poster and Happy Home designer kind of makes him look like a sailor, so I think we're onto something here. But yeah, this dude's literally just like a battleship head. Don't fret, because we have Fret, the dog. Apparently, Fret likes watching sports, specifically football and soccer, and his design is likely based off of like a Labrador or a Golden Retriever. Now we have Frobert, whose design is likely based off of a green and black poison dart frog, so don't touch him. Also, he might be a big fan of Gracie, as he used to wear her signature top. Now we have Gladys, whose appearance is based off of the red-crowned crane, and her name probably could originate from the Everglades, I guess where the cranes can also be. Also, according to the lore, she might be an accomplished weaver. Bunny's Hop, and Hopkins is an inflatable rabbit. What? He even has an air valve on the back of his head, which is wild. Apparently, he needs to stay away from sharp objects for fear of deflating. That is terrifying. Ike is an interesting villain villager. He's been around for a while, but he's actually the father of the discontinued villager Poco, and they have a strong resemblance, though Poco only appeared in Dobutsu no Mori E+, and hasn't appeared in any games since then, despite the fact that some related villagers like Francine and Chrissy are continued. Poco is not. However, Ike is still around, which is interesting. His goal in New Leaf was to become a carpenter, and similarly, his Japanese name, Daiku, literally translates into carpenter. Now we have a duck called Ketchup. Ketchup's name and design are both based on tomatoes, obviously. Her e-reader card suggests that her tomato appearance actually changes as she matures, and since she's still immature personality-wise, they're still green on the tips of her wings. However, I guess she'll become more ripe with time. That's weird. Food villagers are weird. Okay, then we have Leonardo. If you think about it, leopard starts with L-E-O, and Leonardo starts with L-E-O. And it seems like he's based off of like a spotted leopard. Now we get to Lolly, which is likely a reference to the type of candy, but also her catchphrase Bonbon refers to other types of sweets. Her Japanese name is Ramune, which is like the same thing for like a sweet soda. Now we get to Maggie, who's apparently really shy, but has a love for gardening, and apparently she treats her plants as if they were family. Now she didn't appear in the West until Animal Crossing Welcome Amiibo. She was in the Japanese only Animal Forest E+, but it meant that she didn't get her English name until Welcome Amiibo released. And I can't help but to wonder if the name comes from Maggie and the Ferocious Beast, that old 90s, 2000s television cartoon for kids, because that Maggie character was friends with like a little pig, I think, if I remember correctly. We have like the whole situation with like Kiki and the cat and Maggie and the pig. Okay, let's talk about Margie, Mary, and Miranda next. Margie is this elephant teapot themed character, I think. Is this a teapot thing? I don't know. I guess her head kind of more resembles that of like a carnival type setup. Margie's Japanese name is Sari, which comes from Sari, a Hindu dress, which refers to her being an Indian elephant. Also, Margie is one of the few villagers that's like heavily featured in the Animal Crossing anime, maybe the second main one besides Rosie. Mary's name in English and Japanese both mean happy, with the latter, Sachi, being derived from the kanji Sachi, which means happiness. In her poster, she appears to be covering up her double chin, I think. Kind of an interesting design aspect to kind of highlight this character, but yeah, I guess they did draw like a double chin on her face when they made her. Make her unique. Sometimes, though, this little detail goes overlooked, and it doesn't show up in some places like City Folk or her amiibo card. Then we have Miranda, who's interesting because her e-reader card and Pocket Camp info end up conflicting one another, with one stating that she reads magazines and the other stating that she doesn't. Judging by the information, however, it's likely that she used to read them, then realized that diet culture wasn't for her or something, then became her own trendsetter. Way to go, Miranda. Then we have the cat villager Mo, who does look a lot like the other cat villager Tom. Whether on purpose or not, the two seem to be complete opposites, with Mo being the lazier version of Tom, I think. He apparently makes terrible first impressions, and he loves magic tricks, specifically card tricks. I wonder if his name Mo is like the lazy meow, so they just are like, yeah, Mo. Rod, Roscoe, and Sylvana are next on our list. Rod shares the catchphrase with another villager, Ace, with the catchphrase literally just being Ace. Also, this dude apparently loves pirates. He's kind of dressed like one. Interestingly, though, like not like the lead pirate or anything, just like one of the little side pirates. You guys know what I'm talking about? Roscoe might be the dark horse in this race, but he also might be a reference to Roscoe Goose, a famous jockey who raced predominantly during the 1910s through the 40s. His design and checkered theme, like if you look in his house, are likely based on the Black Knight chess piece, which is kind of clever. And Sylvana has a name that might originate from the Latin word silva, which means forest, referring to her species habitat. Her design is based on the Japanese giant flying squirrel, which I didn't know was a thing. And Sylvana is said to have big ambitions, from being a chef to songwriting to even wanting to fly, which is a reference to the whole flying squirrel thing again. Sylvia used to have the snooty personality, but this actually would end up being changed to sisterly in Animal Crossing New Leaf, and Sylvia also dyes her Joey's hair to match her own. Never really thought of that, did you? Next is Tasha and Tiffany. Tasha's name and design may be a reference to the adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle and Friends, which was an American cartoon that started airing in the late 50s. It featured a squirrel. His name was Rocky. How does this make any sense? Well, in Rocky and Bullwinkle, there was Natasha Fatale, who was like one of the female antagonists of the show. She had these like half-lidded eyes and blue makeup, and then when you look at them side by side, you start to wonder. Then take it a step further, where in Pocket Camp, her description suggests that she could be a secret agent. See here? Connections. Tiffany, on the other hand, is a villager that I honestly forgot even existed. Like with most snooty villagers, Tiffany is very glamorous and stylish and wants to live as though she's a celebrity. Her Japanese name, Bazure, comes from abajur, meaning a mean or unpleasant woman, which relates to her externally, as she is said to be rude or blunt. That said, she also can be unexpectedly thoughtful and considerate of others once they get to know her, so don't judge Tiffany by the way she looks. Victoria's name might be a reference to the Victoria Derby horse race, or it could be a reference to the famous racehorse which was named Victoria Park, or both. Similarly, her design reflects a thoroughbred horse, the breed used in horse racing, wearing a blinker hood. She's apparently a champion racer too. I don't know how that works. Does she race on horses, or does she just like run next to the horses? Next we have Vivian, who is very particular about her fashion and home decor. Her design's likely based off of a German Shepherd dog, and her unused model can be found in the data of Happy Home Designer, and it is just complete nightmare fuel. Look at this. Wow, terrifying. Wade's Japanese name, kamaboko, is the name of a Japanese dish which is made from pureed fish. He loves eating and cooking kamaboko, which might explain why his New Horizons house is full of fish, and he's a penguin. We have Walker, whose name may come from dog walks, but despite that, his interest is cycling, so why not? And Willow's name may originate from the golden willow, which is a type of shrub or tree because of her golden colored wool. She also is apparently the daughter of a royal aristocrat, but her favorite saying is, "You can't fight your genes," which could imply she isn't too happy about it, or maybe she's referring to her golden wool, or maybe she knows that she has good genes because she's an aristocrat and she's trying to make you feel worse about yourself. Maybe. Next we have Ace, who is a bird, which could be like, a play on Ace Pilot. He also kind of resembles Falco Lombardi from the Star Fox series, who is like the ace pilot of the team, but I don't know if that's like a related thing or just, random. Next we have Admiral, who is like this bird dude, but he has like a little catchphrase saying aye aye, which is kind of like a, commander of a ship type vibe, your respect to it. His name's probably a reference to the famous naval officer and explorer Admiral Byrd. Get it? Because he's a bird named Admiral. Anicotti is a mouse that's named after lasagna, I guess. Her catchphrase is cannoli, which is another Italian dish, pastry technically. But in Japan and Korea, her name is lasagna, so I guess it holds up. We have Astrid, whose name probably comes from the prefix astro, which involves stars, and that probably is referencing the star on her face. Also, she has the interest of stargazing and star signs, referenced in her e-reader card profile and pocket camp description, and she also used to wear like stars on her clothes. Ava could have her name from a couple of different things. It could be the Latin word for eggs, which is ova, and then like a play on that, maybe mixing it together with the word avian or another derivative of something like that. Also, her catchphrase is beaker, which probably originates from the word beak. Also, her hobby is singing. I don't know what's going on with Axel. Some think that his name comes from a play on the word XL, like extra large. I guess that makes sense. His Japanese name directly translates to that, so maybe we'll just go with that. Also, his catchphrase is a play on the word honk, referring to a truck, so maybe like demolition derby or something like that. Then we have Bengal. She's a Bengal tiger. And the dog B, who's a beagle. Okay, there's a couple of hippos that we could talk about real quick. Let's bring Bertha, Biff, Biddy, Bubbles. Bring them all out here. These guys all have names that start with B. At first I thought it was like maybe all the hippos in Animal Crossing had B names. That's not the case, but these ones do. So I think Bertha's name comes from like the phrase Big Bertha. Biddy might be from like the opposite of that, being itty bitty. I don't know what's going on with Biff. The only Biff I can think of is from Back to the Future's like bully character. And Bubbles, which is probably just the fact that hippos are known to blow bubbles out of their nose. On the flip side, we have Billy, who is a Billy goat. Get it? A goat villager. His e-reader card says he's old but acts like a kid, which explains why despite his age he's still a jock type character, though also it's funny that they say he acts like a kid. Get it? He's a goat. His Japanese name is Ashindo, which originates from the phrase Ashindo, which means, oh, I'm tired. His beard used to be gray, making his age look more obvious, but this would actually be changed in later games, where now in New Horizons he looks a little younger maybe. Then we have Boots. Yikes. His parents had a very, very dark sense of humor. Boris is like a pig or a boar, and that's probably where his name comes from. And then we have Buzz, who is like a eagle. Eagles fly and stuff. But this could also, much like how Apollo was a reference to like the Apollo missions to the moon, be a reference to Buzz Aldrin, the second person to ever set foot on the moon. Allegedly. Nah, just kidding. He definitely did go to the moon. But what if? Hazel, Sally, and Callie are kind of the most annoying villagers to have to try to explain and figure out every time we get to this topic for whatever reason. It's a little confusing. Okay, so way back in the day, this was a villager named Sally. She was just in like the first version of Animal Crossing, and then she would be removed from the games moving forward for years. Okay, are you guys with me? This character was originally known as Hazel. However, apparently there was a localization issue there, and that wasn't what her name was supposed to be. So in later games, they decided to rename her as Sally, since they had already removed the other Sally. But then, in Animal Crossing New Leaf, they introduced a new squirrel villager named Hazel, which was Sally's old name, who looks like this, but also in an update added back in the other villager who used to have the Sally name before they were taken out of the game. So they didn't have a name for her, which was the one we were talking about at the beginning, and then they named her Callie, and that's how her name's now Callie. So we have Callie, Sally, and Hazel. They've all flip-flopped names, kind of, and it's a whole big mess. I guess Hazel makes sense as a name because it's like a nut and squirrels like nuts. Sally could be a play on Sally Acorn from the Sonic the Hedgehog series, though I don't know if I want to believe that. But yeah, I think they finally got things straightened out. Okay, then we got this mouse named Candy. Her catchphrase is Sweetie, which could relate back to Candy. Also, apparently she loves music. We have Carrie, whose name comes from how maybe she carries her daughter. Get it? Also, apparently Carrie taught her daughter to do her own makeup. Don't know how that's in the lore, but that's a real thing. Cashmere, on the other hand, is a name reference to probably the type of wool, since she's sheep. Also, apparently Cashmere is constantly tempted to shear all her wool off as she thinks it makes her look bloated. It's wild we get to see the inner thinkings of any Animal Crossing villager nowadays. Then we have Stella, who I don't really see where her name originally comes from, but her Japanese name, Akuriru, is the Japanese pronunciation of acrylic, and she's said to knit acrylic scarves, so I guess that one makes sense. This brings up a big conspiracy theory, though. What are sheep's wool actually made of? Because Eunice definitely makes her own garments from her wool. Cashmere's name implies that her wool is that of a goat, but her favorite saying is 100% wool. But then matching that, Stella has the saying of 100% natural fiber, but her name and hobby implies that she uses acrylic wool, and it's said that her coat doesn't actually keep her warm, which may explain her rosy cheeks because she's cold. What if Stella's coat is actually acrylic? What if she doesn't even have a coat, hence her making one out of acrylic? But why does she claim to use natural fiber when acrylic is a synthetic material? Is Cashmere a goat? Is that why she wants to shave her coat? Does she want to be a goat? I think we need to look a little bit deeper here. We have Claude next. His name might be a pun on clodhopper, which means clumsy, with the hopper part referring to the fact that he's a rabbit. In early versions of New Horizons, Claude's house contained a glitch where he would be crafting with two workbenches that would clip into one another. Cleo's interesting. Her name might actually originate from the actress and equestrian Cleo Ridgely. She was apparently the CEO of 3 companies and thus a very successful businesswoman. This also might be reflected in her New Leaf and New Horizons house, which both have like an office theme to it. Also, Cleo is a name that has been used in different languages, kind of like Lily, but depending on the language, Anka, Gigi, and Zoe have had the name Cleo as well. Next up is Cobb, whose name might be a reference to a Cobb salad, a salad that contains bacon. Well, this may also be where his green coloring comes from. His catchphrase is hot dog, which is also a reference to him being a pig, so double whammy. Nintendo is definitely gonna have people eating him. He loves research and archaeology, and it's hinted that he has a PhD or doctorate degree. We have Cookie, which might be a reference to dog treats. Apparently she can be mischievous, but people can't stay mad at her because she's too cute. I understand that. All right, next we're on to Cousteau, whose Italian and German name is Jacques. His name could be a reference to Jacques Cousteau, which also explains his species, since frogs are amphibious and are the coldest villager species to aquatic animals. This dude was a French naval and oceanographer. Also, his catchphrase is wee wee, and a letter the player can get in the original Animal Crossing game would be written in like a French accent or a stereotypical type thing to kind of make him more French. But in the Japanese, Korean, and Chinese versions, he is instead hinted at being Chinese, as his Japanese name, Harumaki, means spring roll, which is a Chinese appetizer dish. Also, it could be considered that Cousteau is actually Chinese because of his clothing. He has a noodle shirt with a Chinese character on it, and then they later updated it to have more of like a Chinese-inspired silk shirt for him. Also, he has Imperial KK playing in his house, which is a Chinese-inspired song, and he says in Happy Home Paradise that he's proud of the Chinese food he makes. He also might be another older villager, much like Billy, but at the same time, while we're wondering whether or not he's from China, we need to ask ourselves, does China exist in Animal Crossing's universe? Because that would make a big difference as to if he can be from a country or not. Then we have the rabbit Doc, which could be, a play on the Bugs Bunny's catchphrase like, "What's up, Doc?" He is suggested to be a professor, as all of his house resembles a classroom or principal's office, but his e-reader card suggests he might be because he wants to relive the feeling of sleeping in school. He's the only lazy villager with an education hobby, so that's Interesting. Okay, now we gotta talk about Ed. So he's apparently really proud of his hair, but his name might actually be a reference to the 1960s American TV series Mr. Ed, show about a talking horse. Also, his favorite saying is beauty is pretty, but it actually used to be beauty is pain, but they later changed it. Ellie's a super complicated villager. Her name's like a play on Ellie Fent, get it? She loves sweets and apparently tries to eat them through her trunk, usually leading them to getting stuck. That's terrifying. Eunice's name is a pun on a ewe, a female sheep. Her catchphrase is lamb chop, which raises so many questions. Bang, on the other hand, is a wolf here, and his Japanese name, Shiberia, comes from Siberia, since his design is based on a Siberian wolf. Also, much like wolves, he's said to love winter and hiding in the snow. Then we have Freya, whose name may originate from Freyja, the Norse goddess of love, beauty, wealth, and war. She also has some similarities to this goddess, as she's described in her e-reader card as being pretty and feminine. Look at this guy, Gonzo. Apparently, he's the only cranky koala, and his name is from Gorgonzola cheese. His favorite saying is brothers are brothers, cheese is cheese, which is probably a reference to the fact that his name is based off of cheese. Actually, his e-reader card says he might even have an almost creepy obsession with blue cheeses. Then we got Grizzly over here. His name straight up comes from Grizzly Bear. Also, his happy home designer request states that he wants to own an oil company. Okay, Grizzly. His poster definitely gives off divorced dad vibes. Groucho's name refers to his cranky personality, and his Pocket Camp description says he's been around the block, which may explain why he has these facial scars or something. It also describes him as looking intimidating, although his design makes him appear more nervous, so who knows, maybe he has some issues he's dealing with from a rough past. Then we have Gruff, whose name comes from the fairy tale Three Billy Goats Gruff. His favorite saying is don't burn bridges, which refers to like the whole like troll guarding bridge in the story. Also, his e-reader card says that girls think his sideburns are really hot. So ladies, let me know. What do you think of Gruff's sideburns? I'm dying to know. We have Hornsby, whose name is pretty self-explanatory. He has a horn. He's also the only lazy rhino. Also, despite the fact that he's not in Happy Home Designer, there is an unused model for him that exists in the game's data, and it looks like some nightmare fuel. Most of Huck's descriptions talk about how he loves coffee. His Pocket Camp description says he even drinks it through a straw for whatever reason. This might be a reference to his Japanese name, Sutoro, which is the Japanese pronunciation for straw, Sutoro. Jambette's name is a mix of jambi, which means leg in French, and et, which is the common suffix for female names. This is likely because frog legs are a delicacy in places like France. Wait, does that mean Jambette's also a food-related name? This is cursed. Despite there being rumors that she goes through an entire tube of lipstick every week, her lips are actually natural. Regardless, she does love makeup, as seen with her Happy Home requests. Now we're on to Kitty, whose wiki doesn't state what type of cat breed she is, but I think her name comes from the fact that she's a cat. Also, apparently she doesn't go outside much to protect her makeup from the elements. I don't even know what that means. Leopold's pretty interesting here. His name comes from Leo, which is like a lion, and it could either be old, which could make sense, but it could also be like a leopard, like lion and leopard put together. We got Leopold. It also might be a reference to King Leopold of Belgium, possibly because lions are often referred to as the kings of the jungle, and his Japanese name is Ticha, which is the Japanese pronunciation of the English word teacher. Apparently his dream job is to be a PE teacher. We have Louie over here, whose clothing used to actually be the little bro shirt, which had Luigi's logo on it, so that was one thing that's interesting, kind of like an Alfonso thing all over again. His name could be kind of a play on a similar L sounding name, but it also could be a reference to King Louie from the Jungle Book, though his design seems to be somewhat inspired by Donkey Kong. Also, apparently he's very popular with the women due to his muscular physique. Next we have Maddie, who apparently loves the internet and IT, and is reflected in her poster outfit. Also, apparently she loves picnics. Then we have Midge, whose name actually probably originates from the word plumage, referencing her feathers, I guess. Also, according to Pocket Camp's description, she's super shy, so shy that the spirals on her cheeks are a result of blushing so much. Her Japanese name is Uzumaki, meaning spiral, which also references her cheeks. Next we have Murphy, whose name is a very common Irish surname. His fur is green, which is the color associated with Ireland, and his catchphrase is laddie. He's essentially the Irish villager. He also apparently carries around a small container of seaweed under his shirt, which he sniffs when he's angry. I have no idea what that's about. Okay, so we have Nate, and his name probably comes from hibernate, since he's a lazy bear villager. Also, apparently villagers have called him a freak in the past because of his unique eyebrows. That's not very nice. It's not correct either, because he just has one eyebrow. They should at least make fun of him for the right thing. Okay, we have Olive, and apparently there's some lore here. Olive is said to love the color pink, but never dresses in it, but she's rumored to be jealous of another villager. Who, might you ask? Pink Pinky, probably because of the pink. We get Aussie, which is a play on Aussie because he's a koala and koalas are known to be from Australia. He's apparently very self-conscious of his height and always wishes he would grow taller. Then we have Paolo, whose name could be a pun on Paun, which is a Japanese onomatopoeia for an elephant trumpeting. But Paolo is described as a little spacey, and he apparently sometimes wonders if he's a figment of everyone's imagination. His house in some of the games are built around this like bath theme, and tying all this together in the trippy background to his poster kind of implies he might be like a recreational drug user, maybe even a bath salt user. Who knows? I mean, I doubt that last part is like a part of Nintendo's official canon, but we can speculate. Now we have Peaches, whose name comes from her pink fur color. I guess this is kind of like a peach color, right? Maybe. She has these plus-shaped eyes, which are reminiscent to two other villagers, Cube and Stitches, but unlike them, there isn't seemingly a reason as to why she has these plus-shaped eyes, but she does. Now we have Piper, and her name is probably based on the Sandpiper, also similar to Jay, for example. Her design isn't actually based on the bird she's named after, instead being more reminiscent of a white Java sparrow. Okay, then we have Prince, whose name is probably a reference to the fairy tale The Frog Prince. Also, the darker green on his face is maybe a beard, actually, and he shaves it often, but always ends up with a 5 o'clock shadow somehow. His Japanese name, Karu, comes from kareru, meaning frog, but he also could be a reference to Uncle Carl, which is a mascot of a Japanese snack called curl, as he has a beard and a frog companion, so it's like a double-on thing going on here. Okay, let's talk about Puck and Rex now. Puck's name and design are based on a hockey player, but he's actually a lazy villager, not a jock, and Rex's name actually might come from the Latin word rex, which translates to king, which is a reference to a lion being like the king of the jungle. He's also the only lazy lion villager. Rio's actually kind of funny. Rio's name is Rio in English, but the Japanese name is De Janeiro, which originates from the Brazilian city of Rio de Janeiro. Similarly, her design is a mix of a red and green macaw, which is native to South America, and the dancer's costume seen in Rio's famous carnivals, which are often adorned with brightly colored feathers, kind of like pave. Rizzo's name is a reference to Rizzo the Rat from the Muppets, and the cloth around his face is called a hakamuri, basically the Japanese equivalent of a balaclava. Next, we have Sandy, whose name originates from the idea that ostriches hide their head in the sand, but this is actually a misconception. Sandy has another horror-worthy unused model, though, which is found in Happy Home Designer. Okay, what's going on with Scoot? Is the headgear here a helmet or a swim cap? There's definitely straps, but it also looks pretty flat. His Japanese name, Mamuro, translates to protect or guard, and the e-reader card states it's for protection because he's convinced everyone is out to get him. So I guess it could be a swim guard helmet. I don't know. That said, his house frequently has swimming pools, so there's like more evidence on that side. Also, I don't know what's going on here. Sudi's name is the same as her personality and can also refer to her prominent nose, or snoot, if you will. Sudi's catchphrase is sniff. And I don't know, I just think it's kind of funny that she's probably just smelling you whenever you go to talk to her. Spike's name refers to his horn. He's also the only cranky rhino. He's described as a tough punk rock kind of guy, but he's also apparently chill. Okay, so Spork's interesting because he actually has a different name in the US version of the game versus the UK version of the game. In the US, his name is Spork, a mix of pork because he's a pig, and spork, like the utensil, because he's a lazy villager. You'll talk about loving food, I guess. I don't know why his name is Crackle in the UK. Maybe that's the sound pigs make when you roast them. I don't know. His Japanese name is just Poku, which is like a Japanese pronunciation of the word pork. So, I mean, people are definitely eating this guy. Sprocket is a robot dude, I guess. His name is likely based off of the type of gear, a sprocket, but it's not known who built Sprocket, but he was programmed with the love of music. We don't know too much about what's going on with Stinky. He's probably stinky. I don't know. He's wearing underwear on his head. Ugh, I don't know. I've never liked Stinky. Sydney, a koala who's named after the city in Australia where koalas live. Honestly, I thought this was the same villager as Yuka until not too long ago. Oh my god, this next villager is called T-Bone, named after a T-bone steak. Tad, on the other hand, is kind of clever because he's probably named after like a tadpole. You know, like a baby frog before they turn into frogs. He likes fitness, especially jumping, which relates to his species. Then we got Tom, who's essentially just named after like a tomcat. Get it? Besides the fact that he looks like Mo, he is not Mo, and according to his e-reader card, Tom used to be a world-class boxer. Also on his poster here, his shirt says dog on it many times. Tutu has a theme around shaved ice. It's kind of funny, so in Japanese, Shirokuma is a shaved ice dessert, which literally translates to white bear, so here we are. And in Happy Home and Pocket Camp requests, they always revolve something with like a shaved ice machine, and her e-reader card states that she's fond of frozen treats. We got Ursula, whose name probably originates from Latin and Portuguese word ursa, which means bear. She actually used to have a snooty personality, but this was later changed to sisterly in Animal Crossing New Leaf, likely because her Japanese name, Nea, comes from Neisan, which literally means big sister. Velma's name comes from her resemblance of the Scooby-Doo character, probably, and she's also the only female goat villager that has facial hair. We got Vladimir, who's like the Russian bear, you know, the symbol used to represent Russia. His catchphrase is Niet, which is no for Russian. Weber is probably named after the webbed feet that ducks have, and apparently he likes to play different instruments. We have Winnie, whose name is literally just based off of the sound that horses make, but in Japanese her name is Makibasuta, which originates from makiba, which is the Japanese word for both ranch and star. And you see she has a star on her forehead. There's Zoe, who has like turquoise on her design, but it's actually a bodysuit and not a pattern. You can see the buttons if you look closely. This raises so many questions. All right, now we got to talk about Anka, and obviously Egypt has the reputation of like worshiping cats and had like a cat goddess back in ancient Egypt days. Anka's name likely comes from the word Ankh, which is an Egyptian hieroglyphic character that reads life. I don't know, Anka's kind of a cool themed character. She kind of has like the Cleopatra eyes, which seems fitting too. Annalise might be a horse, but her name might actually be a pun on Anesse, which is a French word referring to a female donkey, and I'm sorry if my pronunciation is awful, I know nothing about French. Boomer might come from the sound that a bomb explosion makes, like boom, and he like looks like a pilot, so maybe he was like a, I don't know, like a bomber pilot. Okay, we have Bud. I don't really know the origins of his name other than maybe like Buddy, or what if there's something else going on here? I mean, I doubt it, but we can wonder. I feel like Bud's name would be fitting. Caroline is another squirrel villager who might be named after the eastern gray squirrel, which the scientific name is Sciurus carolinensis. Wow, that pronunciation's awesome. But yeah, Caroline. See it? Okay, we got the green bear named Charlize, which might originate from chartreuse.
Chartreuse.
Which is a shade of green. Carlos. Really easy here. Curly hair and Carlos. Put it together. Bam. We got Carlos. Come on, it's kind of clever. He's got like the little curly horns or whatever. Also, he used to have a cranky personality, but was later changed to smug in Animal Crossing New Leaf onward. So like, you know, he came around. He got a better personality. Dobie, on the other hand, is a little bit different because he actually used to be a lazy villager, but in Animal Crossing New Leaf, his personality was changed to cranky. So he definitely got old, bitter, and hardened with time. His name, though, might be originating from a Doberman, which is a breed of dog, since his name's like Dobie. We have Drift here, so he might like vehicles or something, maybe. I don't know. But he's likely based off of a poison dart frog. His Japanese name is Doku, which literally means poison. We have Faith here, who's a koala and seems to be depicted as like some sort of tropical descent, maybe Hawaiian, but her Japanese name is actually kind of interesting. It's Machi, as in March, which is a reference to Koala's March, which is a Japanese brand of koala-shaped snacks. She also has a March birthday and KK March playing in her house. We got Frank here, who's probably Brazilian, maybe? I mean, it looks like it. His design is based on the yellow-faced parrot native to Brazil. He's on the cover of KK Bossa, a song based on the Brazilian genre bossa nova. But his Japanese name is Hulk or Haruku, probably a reference to his cranky personality rather than his green appearance. Or maybe it's like an all-in-one thing. Then we got Harry, whose name is likely just Harry, referring to his beard, his awful, awful beard. He used to be a jock personality, but later he was changed to cranky. His portrait photo seems to reference, though, his past as a jock personality villager. Was he a basketball player? What's going on? Then we get to Julia, whose design is a peacock. There's a lot of fan theories out there. Since she's like a female peacock, maybe she's trans. Nintendo usually doesn't like to acknowledge anything like that, though. But I don't know. She's rocking the fashion. Maybe one day Nintendo will acknowledge it. But as we know with the whole like CJ and flick theories that were out there, Nintendo tried hard to kind of shy away from it. So I doubt we would get any full acknowledgement, but maybe behind the scenes someone back there was trying to have more representation of potentially trans characters, or Julia's just a peacock. I don't know. We have June next, whose Japanese name was May, and her birthday month is May, which is not June. I don't know why the English name was changed to June, but we have June here in the West. So, okay. We have Kid here, whose kid's name is literally the same as that of a baby goat, which refers to his species. He does resemble Sherb a little bit, but they don't have any connection beyond just the looks being similar, I think. I don't know. They could easily be siblings, I feel like. Nonetheless, He apparently loves photography. We have Mayel next, who is another snooty villager who also loves fashion. Apparently, she has an aura that's hard to describe. I have no idea what that even means. She might end up being one of the most generic villagers of all time. There's really nothing too unique going about her that makes her stand out across, like, other villagers. I don't know. If you know something about Mayel, let us know. Redeem this character for us. We have Marina, whose name comes from the Latin word of marinus, meaning of the sea. She apparently is not fazed by much, not even Octavian, as her e-reader card says that, referring to the other octopus villager. We got another generic villager, Norma, who is a normal cow personality villager. The only cow that has a normal personality. She also loves to dress up like her favorite actresses, apparently. But that's it. Norma's up there in the most generic villagers on the list here. We have O'Hare, which is kind of clever because of the species being like a hare. Also, just like with Faith and June, O'Hare has maintained his tropical island appearance from Dobutsu no Mori's Animal Island, but now he's just like a regular villager. Also, his resting face is just kind of, I don't know. It just looks like someone like slightly judging you. Then we got Plucky, whose name might come from plucking feathers. She definitely doesn't do that because she's said to be really relaxed. She also used to wear the head of an anthurium plant on her head, but this was later removed in Animal Crossing New Horizons. Rattle is absolutely terrifying. His name might originate from a rattling cough, a term used to describe violent coughing, and if he is a toxic frog, it could be insinuated that if you touch Rattle, you'll die. Maybe you'll get a death rattle. Get it? And maybe that's why he's wearing a mask. He's trying not to get other people sick, but at the same time, he also looks like he has a science coat on or a doctor's coat. So maybe he's like an unlicensed doctor or mad scientist. Is he experimenting on patients? This guy is terrifying. Something is going on here for sure. We got Roswell, who's actually the only smug alligator villager, and he has this whole like alien theme associated with him. I think his name probably comes from Roswell, New Mexico, which is this like big conspiracy theory that the U.S. Air Force crash landed maybe a flying saucer and aliens were discovered. His house before Animal Crossing New Horizons was always space themed. His design on him resembles crop circles, which is known for like being associated with aliens. His favorite saying is "keep your eyes on the skies." You guys get it here, right? Like he's definitely I don't know, a conspiracy theorist, a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist. We have Rowan here, and while there were other villagers to have their personalities changed, his was actually the earliest, where he went from being a cranky villager to a jock villager after Dobutsu no Mori E+. His Pocket Camp description, though, might be a reference to this, saying that he got into sports later on in life, and that could also refer to the fact that he might be middle-aged. Like, there's definitely some villagers that are older than others, and Rowan might be one of them. We have Violet, who also had a personality change. She was originally a peppy villager, but later was changed to a snooty villager. She and Candy actually had the same catchphrase, sweetie, but Violet's is probably less literal. Her e-reader card basically calls her a mommy for being buff. That's a mistranslation, right? Next we have Annabelle, a villager who is an anteater. So Annabelle and anteater, it's kind of like a little bit of a play on the beginning of the word, I guess. Boone's pretty similar. His name is Boone as a play on baboon, which is, I guess, what he's based off of. Elise is an Animal Crossing villager that is the only snooty monkey villager. Also, she loves her glasses, even asking for glasses-themed houses in Animal Crossing Happy Home. Now, I don't know why her name's Elise. In Japanese, it's just Monko, which is like monkey, but yeah, Elise in English. We have Drake, whose name is the name of a male duck, which makes sense because he is a duck. His Japanese name is Foie which comes from foie gras, I think is how you pronounce it. It's a food that's made with ducks. Kind of like pate, which maybe the villager Pate is named after, so more eating ducks or villagers in Animal Crossing. We have this lion villager named Elvis, likely named as Elvis Presley because he was known as the king, and lions are sometimes referred to as the king of the jungle. Also, his design and house interiors are based off of king royalty type stuff. His catchphrase actually used to be "thank you very much," which was a direct reference to Elvis Presley's catchphrase, but they changed it later to be "better to live a coward than a dead hero." That's a bit morally ambiguous. They changed it later in Animal Crossing New Horizons to "better live a coward than a forgotten hero," so it doesn't reference a death anymore. But yeah, really weird one. We have Jitters, who looks like he's detoxing on something. However, However, in Japanese, his name is Jinyo, which could be a reference to either Ronaldinho or Jairzinho, two famous Brazilian soccer players. I don't know anything about soccer, but I could see how the name could appear that way. It's also worth noting his design is based off of a monk parakeet, which is native to Brazil and some surrounding countries, and since he loves soccer, it kind of makes sense here. Melba is another koala, which just kind of falls into the stereotypical Australian-themed villager that we've looked at a couple of times now. Melbourne is a city in Australia, so I think that's where her name comes from, and koalas live in Australia. Her catchphrase is toasty, which is a reference to Australian food, Melba toast. Monty is a monkey, and the name likely is just kind of a play on that. In Japanese, though, his full name is Saru Monty, because Saru is monkey in Japanese, so there's even more depth there. It's also apparently up for debate whether or not Monty dyes his fur. Do you guys think this is his natural fur color, or does he dye it? Then we have Nana, who likely is a play on the word banana, and monkeys are known for apparently loving bananas, but it could also be a reference to a character with the same name from the Ice Climbers games because of her pink color, and her catchphrase is Popo, which is the other Ice Climber character, the blue one, so it could also be like a double reference here, and that'd be really cool. Rhonda's one of the 3 rhinos to have only one horn, the others being Azalea and Renee. Although she resembles a snooty villager, she actually has the normal personality, so that's surprising. I'm assuming Rhonda's name starts with RH, just like the word rhino, so that makes sense. Then we have Rodeo, whose name is probably a reference to, a rodeo. His catchphrase is also chaps, which is the name of the leather covering worn over jeans during rodeos, and his favorite hobby is magic. Who would have guessed? Next, we have Ruby the albino rabbit, and her name might be a reference to her red eyes. Of the 5 rabbits that have moon themes, Ruby is the only one to maintain this theme throughout all of her video game installments. I guess there were other rabbits that had moon themes, but Ruby still has it as of modern day. We have Simon, whose name might come from simian, which is a scientific group name for monkeys and apes. All we really know about him is that he loves bananas. Then we have Stitches, who is a teddy bear, I'm pretty sure, so his name seems kind of self-explanatory. He is a stuffed animal. Then we get Tammy, whose name probably comes from tamarin. It's a type of monkey, but her striped tail actually more closely resembles the ring-tailed lemur. Tammy's the only character to have her birthday changed between Animal Crossing games. Originally, her birthday was April 1st, and it was later changed to April 2nd for whatever reason. Next, we have Tipper, whose name comes from cow tipping, which is a thing that people do in, I don't know, I assume the South. Her catchphrase is pushy, though, which is kind of funny for someone's name being Tipper. We have Whitney, whose name likely is a reference to her white fur, and similarly, her Japanese name, Bianca, is the Italian word for white, so that lines up. It could also be that, Whitney is a W name, and she's a wolf, so I guess that makes sense. Okay, so we got a gorilla named Al, and I thought about this one for a long time. I didn't know what was going on, but could it be that, the name Al is because of Goralla? I mean, they have a villager named Rilla for gorilla. Why not Goralla? I'm trying, guys. Next, we have Bettina. There's speculation that this character is based off of Betty Crocker for whatever reason. I mean, sure, why not? Then we have Carmen, who has a chocolate themed for her, probably because of the whole chocolate rabbits during Easter time. Her English name likely originates from caramel or caramel, and her Japanese name is Choco, and both of her house requests involve chocolate, so it might be a reference to the chocolate bunnies, but I guess it could be a caramel bunny too. I don't know. So then we have Chester, whose name is Chester, and his catchphrase is rookie, which could all just be references to chess, and chessboards are typically black and white, same coloration as a panda, so you can see where the connections could be drawn here. So we have the villager Clyde, and there's a type of horse named a Clydesdale, which could be the naming conventions here. Also, what's going on with Clyde's hair? Then we have Gala the pig, whose house interior usually contains a reference to piggy banks for some reason. Also, did you guys know you can actually use piggy banks in Animal Crossing New Horizons? Who would have thought? Her Japanese name is Tameko, which comes from tameru, which means saving money, like the verb to save money, I guess. Then we got Gigi, who's the only snooty frog villager, and she apparently has high standards, whatever that means. I don't have any theories as to how Gigi got her name, so if any of you guys have an idea, let me know in the comments. We have Gloria next, whose English and Japanese names might both be a reference to the silent film actress Gloria Swanson. This also could be a play on the whole ugly duckling story, which Gloria seems to be the reverse of, as she believes she's a swan or whatever. I don't know. It's a little bit confusing, but obviously Gloria Swanson, she's a duck, a swan, ugly duckling. You see all the connections. This one's really easy. We have Iggly. He's a penguin, but his name probably comes from the word igloo. In Japanese, his name is Norimaki, which comes from a Japanese word for sushi rolls. Okay, then we got Sterling and Knox. Both of these guys are based on knights, and they're set to work together. Both of their designs and posters even match each other, so we got like a little duo going on here. Knox is likely named after Fort Knox, which is a military base that is known for containing gold, and he has gold armor here, so I guess that makes sense. Also, their Japanese names are Ginkaku and Kinkaku, which are from two Japanese temples, but also they could be made to like be representative of silver and gold, so that's neat. We have Mac, whose design is based off of a bulldog. He's apparently very set on his goals, even if he doesn't know what his goals are yet. What a guy. Then we have Marcel, who gets his name and appearance from the famous French mime Marcel Marceau. His Japanese name is Monja, and that is instead probably derived from monjayaki, which is a popular Japanese dish in Tokyo, and it might be because of his personality that he loves to eat. Okay, then we have Moose, who's likely named after moose, as in the hair product, hence his unique hairstyle, plus it sounds like mouse, a little double joke here, and he's kind of a greaser. Then we have Mott, whose name might actually be a reference to the band called Mott the Hoople, whose members later created another band called British Lions. He's a lion. Apparently his glasses don't have lenses on them. He's too much of a jock for actual glasses, but he wears these for whatever reason. We have Pico, whose name is a term used in tea grinding, and her Japanese name comes from jasmine tea. Pico can also mean unopened leaf bud, which her catchphrase being bud could be a connection here. And Poppy's name comes from her fur, which is red like a poppy flower. Then we have Wendy, who has this like whole weather theme, with her English name already sounding like windy and her Japanese name translating to sleet. Even her favorite saying is every cloud has a silver lining, which kind of ties into the whole weather theme going on here. We're moving into the final 100 here, and next up is Agnes, who is a black pig. And if you didn't know this, I didn't know this, in Okinawa there is a breed of black pig called Agu pigs, so Agnes could be a play on that perhaps. Agnes's like special saying is also you reap what you sow, which is like a play on a pig being a sow, so I don't know, but you guys get it. Annalisa is pretty simple, I think, with her naming conventions. Her name once again starts with A-N-N-A. It's kind of like Anteater. Annalisa, they do this with the Anteater villagers from time to time. But fun fact, she first appeared in Animal Crossing New Leaf and then appeared in every game after that. Apple, she's named after the fruit, and I guess, I mean, you could argue she kind of looks like an apple. I don't know. It is interesting that Apple's like happy home request usually involves apples too. Okay, we got the villager Bam, who is a deer, and I can't help but to wonder, could Bam be named after like Bambi, like the deer movie? I like this theory. Honestly, I don't know what's going on with the villager Barold. He's a lazy villager. He is kind of boring. I don't know if he's actually that boring. I'm assuming his name is a play on bear, because he's a bear cub, and the name Harold, maybe? They're like, oh, Barold. It's not that interesting, I know. Then we got Beardo, on the other hand, who's a bear that is kind of lacking a beard. I mean, he's got the sideburns, he's got the mustache, but I don't see a beard on him. So for someone to straight up be called Beardo and not have a beard, I don't know, I feel kind of scammed. At the same time, the word beard does have the word bear also in it, so maybe that's where the name came from, but I don't know, dude. Now we have the villager Bo, and he's a deer, maybe an antelope. Not 100% sure on what he is. At the same time, I don't actually know what his name could originate from. I don't know. His name has a lot of different translations, so this one is one I'm a little more stumped on when it comes to like the origins or why his name is what it is, but if you have theories, let me know. He also wears a reindeer hoodie, which I feel like that's kind of funny considering he's like a deer or an antelope. Then we have Benjamin, who's a dog villager, but could just be like named after Benji, which was like a famous small golden mixed breed dog. There's a series of Benji movies that were made since the 1970s. Also, in one case, he was voiced by Chevy Chase. But yeah, I think Benjamin, I think that there's like a little nod to this famous dog. Next up, we have Bianca, who's a white tiger, and Bianca in Italian, I think it is the translation for the color white. So Bianca kind of makes sense because, you know, she's a white tiger. I guess you could argue she more resembles like a snow leopard or something instead. Whatever she is white and not like the standard yellow you would expect a cat type villager tiger thing to be. But I think like as far as like the body type specifically, she falls under tiger because there's only like set animals for Animal Crossing. So I guess that kind of makes sense. Next we have Blanche. I don't know. Similar situation though. White in French. We got the same thing going on here, and this time she's a white ostrich. So that's where her name convention comes from. But I think her actual species probably more resembles a stork or an egret, or I don't know, some sort of fantasy creature that we've never seen in the real world. Bonbon's an easy one. We've already kind of talked about like chocolate rabbits in this because Animal Crossing can't help themselves. I think Bonbon's just another example, type of chocolate treat. Sometimes they're rabbits, sometimes they're an Animal Crossing villager, and that's where we are. Next we have the chicken buffet. Fina? And this one confused me a little at first, and then it clicked for me and I realized, man. So I think my working theory right now is the first 3 letters of her name actually comes from broth, as in chicken broth, like the soup that you eat. And so just another Animal Crossing villager probably falling into the food category. Her favorite saying also is, don't peck the hand that feeds you, so keep that in mind. Okay, Bruce is actually a bit interesting. Besides the fact he's a cranky villager, you know, there's a lot of theories as to why his name specifically is Bruce. I think the best theory that's out there is that in the original Norwegian folk story of the 3 Billy goats gruff, one of the goats is named Bruce, and that's what we're going off of. It could also be like a play on the word bruise, which is a type of injury, but since he's like a cranky villager, he might be more of like a tough, hardened type of person. I don't know, maybe he spent some time in prison. We don't know what his story is. I mean, there is another cranky goat villager named Gruff, which similarly could come from the exact same Norwegian fairy tale story. So maybe there is more going on here. Canberra, not that interesting because we've seen this play on naming conventions for koala villagers already. Canberra is a region in Australia. It's like a city. Koalas live in Australia, so another one of those. Next, we have Celia, who's the only eagle villager that has the normal personality. She also was the first female eagle villager to be added to the game since Amelia, the only female eagle for like over a decade. However, I can't help but to wonder, with a name like Celia, maybe she's secretly a seagull disguised as a eagle. I guess that doesn't make sense. Okay, we got Chatter. His story is pretty straightforward. He's a mouse villager, and he gets his name from being a type of cheese. Probably a play on cheddar cheese, since his name is Chatter. But in the lore, apparently, the spelling of his name was just an accident from his parents. So, rough. I feel like that's one of those examples of someone who has, like, their name spelled in a really, really, really weird way when, like, there's a regular way of spelling their name. It's like if your name was Logan, but spelled with, like, a W and an H. We have the villager Cherry, not to be confused with the villager Cherry, the only difference being, you know, the species and the letters. Cherry's actually the only dog villager that has the big sister personality. Despite this, in Happy Home Requests, she loves fashion, which is more typically associated with, like, the snooty personality, or maybe even the peppy personality, but usually not the, like, sisterly personality. So that makes Cherry a little bit more stand out. Next, we have Chops. His name's probably a play on pork chops, right? Interestingly, his Korean name is a pun on the Korean word for pork, Don Hwang, where Don means pork. Also, for whatever reason, he apparently believes he was a king in a past life. Now we have Claudia, who's the only snooty tiger villager, where her name is likely a pun on claw, since she's a tiger. Her Japanese name is Marinin, which might be a reference to Marilyn Monroe, maybe? Okay, now we have Clay, who I thought for a really long time was like a luchador wrestler of some sort, but that's not actually the case. As it turns out, Clay's name and design are based on doju, which are ancient Japanese statues that are made from clay. They're also what, you know, the ancient statue is based on, like that art piece that you can get. This actually pops up in a few Nintendo properties from time to time, like the Pokemon ball toy. There's a similarity going on here. Now we have Coach, whose name likely just is a reference to his jock personality. You like sports. Then we have Cole, whose English name likely just comes from the fact that his fur is kind of like a coal color. His Japanese name, though, is Amamin, which comes from the Amami rabbit species, which are typically black and native to 2 islands off the coast of Japan. Next, we have Colton, whose name probably comes from colt, which is the word for a young male horse, but his design and catchphrase are based on chess, specifically the White Knight chess piece. He shares this with Roscoe, who's maybe based off of the Black Knight chess piece, so maybe they have like crazy chess matches. Next, we have Cranston, who's not named after Breaking Bad, but instead is probably named after like the bird, which is a crane. His design is reminiscent to a sandhill crane, but is more likely based on the Japanese crested ibis, which his Japanese name is actually a pun on. Croquet's name likely comes from the sound that frogs make. His design is based off of a Daruma doll, but some people say he also kind of looks like a crab, which, to be fair, he kind of does. Deidre, a villager I literally didn't know existed. I don't know how I've missed this villager. Her name's likely a play on, you know, a deer. Deidre deer. And apparently she loves autumn. Delhi is a monkey, and his name refers to the city in India that has the same name. His design is based off of a gray langur, which is native to India. Diana's name might come from the mythical goddess of the hunt, who transformed a huntsman into a deer when he saw her bathing in the woods or something like that. It's some crazy lore. Her house has a bathhouse theme to it, which also might be like a roundabout reference to that. Next, we have Diva, which, you know, could kind of fall in line with the whole like word meant to describe like a singer or maybe someone who's like high maintenance. It could fit with their personality. Interestingly enough, her Japanese name is Aida, which is based off of the famous opera that is set in ancient Egypt, which ties together with, you know, her room aesthetic. Her design, on the other hand, is probably based off of the Indian purple frog. We have Drago, and everything about him just screams like dragon hobby obsessed, maybe. He also has a house that has a seahorse statue, as the Japanese word for seahorse actually translates to dragon's illegitimate child. Eric is up next, and his name's probably a play on the word elk, which is a North American large species of deer, though in Eurasia it's another word more for moose, which his design is kind of based on. Apparently villagers often mistake him for Jingle, who is the special villager who visits on Toy Day, which is the equivalent of like running up to an old man at the supermarket and just assuming he's Santa. Alright, we got Eugene, whose name is probably from the type of eucalyptus plant, a plant that koalas famously eat. His design also could be based off of like a stereotypical greaser, or maybe Elvis Presley. In later games, his sunglasses can be swapped out though, which is kind of cursed. Now we have Fauna, whose name comes from both the word fauna, meaning like animals, and fawn, which means young deer. Her Japanese name is Doremi, which is a play on the musical scales do, re, mi. And then the whole song, you know, from what is it, The Sound of Music? It's like do, a deer, and then it's like literally a female deer in this case. See what's going on here? All right, we got the monkey named Flip, which his name actually comes from the monkey flip, which is a wrestling throw. This also ties back together with the whole jock personality. His Japanese name is Sasuke, which could be, you know, a reference to the famous ninja Sarutobi Sasuke, because of the whole surname Sarutobi means monkey jump, the same ninja who inspired the Naruto character that has the same name. All right, we got Flo, and no, we're not talking about Progressive. This is a villager who might be a reference to ice floes, which are like big sheets of ice, and she's a penguin. She's also the only penguin that has the big sister personality. Okay, we got Flora, whose name probably either comes from like flora in like flowers, or Florida, which is where many flamingos are native to. Her design is also based off of a flamingo, obviously, and her house interior reflects that. Who are these flamingos here? Okay, Flurry's name likely comes from a snow flurry, referring to her white fur color. Her house requests and poster background also relate to snow. She's the only hamster that has the normal personality, and apparently she's very gullible. Another villager kind of didn't know existed until research for this video. I don't know. I just literally have never seen this villager before. Okay, we got Frida, who kind of resembles like a bunch of food going on. I mean, the face kind of looks like a potato. We got the whole hot dog suit. We got the whole cheeseburger thing going on here. It's a lot. Frida's name also is like fries in a couple of different languages. Her design's obviously food themed, which, you know what? I can respect it. I can respect a good love for food. Okay, we got Fuchsia, on the other hand, who's literally fuchsia. Her name comes from the shade of pink, the same name. It's like the color of her fur here. Her Japanese name is Jessica, which is a pun on shika, which means deer in Japanese. Okay, then we have Gale. Gale's name's probably taken from maybe like gator. It's an alligator. I think that would make sense. Her design for Happy Home Designer requests all relate to pink hearts, and apparently she's selfless somehow. Then we have Graham, he's a nerd. Okay, Greta. Greta's design is based on the otafuku, which is a type of Japanese mask and is a symbol of good luck. We got Hamlet, whose name's probably a reference to the Shakespearean character of the same name and a pun on the fact that he's a hamster. His favorite saying is "the ear's the thing," which is also a reference to the line from the play, which was originally "the play's the thing." Okay, we got Humphrey, whose name is a mix of Humphrey and hamster. His eyes give him the appearance of being angry, which apparently he usually is. You know, maybe he's not all that bad. Maybe he's not angry, he's just passionate. All right, we got Hans. His name is Scandinavian, and said countries are known for cold climates, and he looks like a dude who likes the cold. This also kind of ties into the idea that Hans's design is like based off of a yeti, which are said to be from cold areas, so I can kind of see the connections there. Okay, then we got Henry, whose name, much like the villager Prince, probably comes from the Frog Prince fairy tale. He's named after the Frog Prince's servant, Henry. His design is also maybe based off the orange-eyed tree frog. Apparently a long time ago, Henry tried to master the martial arts, but despite that, he's already more of like a smug villager. He's not a jock, but that makes sense. We've heard smug villagers say some wild things over the years. Okay, this dude's name is just Hippo, but it is spelled wildly. I don't know. Also, in Pocket Camp, his official description says, from wearing the most upscale fashions to reading obscure poetry, Hippo will do anything to give off the appearance of class and poise. His real name's Gary. What? All right, we got Jackis, whose name comes from jackdaw, which is a bird that he kind of resembles. He's also implied to maybe be French because of that very French-sounding name that I can't pronounce well. So that's cool. His English catchphrase is also in French, which translates to darn it. He's also kind of got this DJ music theme going on for him, which is kind of interesting. And then at the same time, his Japanese catchphrase is a slang word that means check it out, which is often used in like Japanese rap songs. Also, his house is like a club for whatever reason. Then we got Julian, who's a horse apparently, but I definitely think he's a unicorn. He describes himself as a gift from the skies, which combined with his smug personality suggests he might be a little full of himself, but I mean, look at that poster. That is insane. He is definitely like feeling like he's special, and I can respect that energy. Next, we have Cat. Her name is based on the fact that she's a cat. Also, she's the only cat villager that actually has the big sister personality. So when I was trying to make an Animal Crossing island of cats only, but also have every personality, Cat had to be there. Her house also kind of implies that she might like some rock music. Keegan's name is based off of the Old English surname derived from a place meaning place of hawks, and that kind of makes sense. His design is reminiscent of a blue and yellow macaw. We have Ken. His name probably comes from the word chicken or shuriken, which is like a ninja star, and he has this whole ninja theme going for him, so maybe there's some more going on here. Okay, get this. We have a pig named Kevin, and maybe this is a reference to Kevin Bacon, because bacon, you know, pig, there's a connection here. His design seems actually based on a wild boar piglet, which is reinforced by his names in both Japanese and Korean, as they both derive from the language's word for boar. Okay, we got Klaus, and he has like an ancient Greece theme going on with him. His name is actually Greek too, and his design features gold arm cuffs, gladiator sandals, this curly hair. You know, these are all features that are commonly associated with ancient Greece. Okay, Kyle's name and design both come from African wild dogs, as their genus is Lycaon, and like is Kyle backwards. See that? Interesting. He also apparently loves music, and both his New Leaf and New Horizons house contain a setup for like a band. Look at that. Lionel. His name is pretty self-explanatory. His happy home house requests are toilet and bathroom themed. Okay. Lopez's name and design are based on antelopes. You know, Antelopez. Get it? His Japanese name's also a reference to this, as his Japanese pronunciation is Tomuson, which is like based off of a Thompson gazelle. Okay, Lucha has a wrestling theme, you know, maybe actually like a whole luchador thing, which is, you know, finally coming full circle. His house, interiors, and requests are all wrestle themed as well. His Japanese name is a reference to the famous wrestler Mil Mascaras. Okay, then we have Lyman, whose name might actually come from his lime green fur color. He's the only koala villager, by the way, that has a jock personality. Okay, we have Marcy, which name probably is a branch off of the word marsupial because she's a kangaroo. Her house requests are always nursery themed, and she and her baby are probably on the same wavelength here. We have the world famous Marshall, whose name might actually come from marshmallows because of his fur color. His default expression in Pocket Camp and catchphrase was sulky, implying that he might be, you know, going through some moody stuff sometimes, maybe a little too blunt. His face can be seen in some latte art also in Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, but to me the art looks more like he's just like peeking his head out of a coffee cup. But I guess it is latte art. Okay, we have Meringue, who has this like candy dessert theme. Her name comes from meringue, which is a type of dessert. Her appearance and catchphrase are based on strawberry shortcake. Her house interiors and requests are always candy or dessert themed. Her Japanese name is also like based off of a French pastry that I cannot say.
Pâtisserie.
Okay, then we have Mira, whose name is the same as the star in the Cetus constellation. Her superhero design and color scheme bear a slight resemblance to Sailor Venus, a superhero character from the Sailor Moon franchise, and her Japanese name references this, as it's very similar to Sailor Venus's real name, Minako. As mentioned earlier, the space-themed rabbit villagers are a reference to the moon, maybe looking like a rabbit making mochi? I don't know. Then we have Molly, who is, you know, similar to Mallory, might get her name from a mallard duck species. Her Japanese name, Kamomi, Naomi comes from Kamo, which means duck, and she apparently loves reading and dreams of having her own publishing house. Then we have Muffy, whose name might be a reference to the headpiece that she wears. When you look at it, it kind of combined with her like ears or horns or whatever, make it look like she's wearing earmuffs. She has black wool, makeup. She's got this like gothic look going. So that's great. Her Japanese name is the Japanese pronunciation of the word frill, because frills are common in like the gothic style there. Okay, then we have Naomi, whose name means beauty in Japanese and could be a reference to the fashion model Naomi Campbell. She apparently is very mature, loves art, apparently especially sad art. Then we have Olaf, whose name comes from olfactory, which means relating to the sense of smell and references his species, like large nose. His stylish hair and default outfit resemble a flamenco dancer, which is further referenced in his Animal Crossing Pocket Camp description. Okay, then we have Panzetti. Panzetti's name comes from pancetta, which is an Italian dish made from pork. Apparently her skin is very smooth and she loves skincare. Okay, then we have Poppy, whose name and design are based on an okapi, like with Julia's design being that of a peacock, but she's like a female villager. Poppy's design actually resembles more of a female okapi rather than a male. Female okapis lack horns and instead have swirl-shaped fur on their heads, which can be seen on his design, so, maybe another trans villager here. Okay, then we have Pashmina, which Pashmina's name is a type of cashmere wool and is also a Persian word which means made of wool, both relating to goat fleece. She's the only goat villager with big sister personality. We have Peck, whose name obviously refers to him being a bird, but could also come from peck, as in like pectoral muscles, because he's a jock. He's also maybe designed off of the Java finch. Then we have Penelope. Penelope's design has a bow instead of typical mouse ears, which, wait a second, how does that even work? Are those her ears? Does she not have ears? Is she a fake mouse? I've never realized this until now. Okay, we have Phil, whose name and design are probably based off of a pheasant, more specifically a green pheasant, though he kind of, resembles the Falco once again, Falco Lombardi from Star Fox. Phoebe, her name and design is probably based off of a phoenix. Her house and her house requests all have fire themes, which relates to the whole like phoenix's ability to set itself on fire, or however that works. Apparently she knows the secret to a long life, but according to her, it's not magical regeneration, it's vitamins. Okay, we have Pietro, whose name is a mix of Pied, which means multicolored, and Piero, which is a type of pantomime character that often looks and acts like a clown. His design and house interiors and requests all have colorful clown themes. Apparently most other villagers find him creepy. I don't know. Also, he has a teardrop on his face, and if that's painted on, isn't that like a symbol that like you've killed someone in like gang culture? I don't know. Logan, look that one up for me. Okay, then we have the next villager, Quilson, whose name comes from quill, which could actually be a reference to like the type of pen that used to be used back in the day before pens were a thing, where you used feather and ink. Despite his appearance, he's actually a smug villager, not lazy. He apparently looks so exhausted from spending all night looking at himself in the mirror. Great. Okay, then we have Renee, whose name comes from rhino. Apparently she used to be a delinquent as a kid, but left those days behind her to become more mature and dependable. That said, in her house request, she reminiscents about hanging out on the streets. What does that even mean? Okay, then we have Rodney, one of the most hated villagers of all time, but you know what? I don't know. Rodney gets a bad rap. I know there's some people out there who love Rodney, and Rodney is the best villager ever. I've seen people worship Rodney. I've seen people question me about what's up with Rodney. So you know what? Rodney's not that bad. Apparently he likes filmmaking too. Okay, then we have Rooney. Rooney has like this boxing theme, and this could just be the whole concept of a boxing kangaroo, which is a common national symbol in Australia, but his name could be a pun on his species, like kangaroo, Rooney. And there could also be a reference to the boxing trainer Kevin Rooney, who trained famous heavyweight champion Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was also likely the reason for his Japanese name, Maiku, which, there's like a double play here, like Maiku, Mike Tyson. His house interiors all request and are all related to boxing. And despite this, he's apparently not a very good boxer. Okay, then we have Rory, whose name comes from roar because he's a lion. His design is based on shishi, which are traditional Chinese lion statues. His house and house requests are ocean themed, which is a reference to a variation of shishi found in the Ryukyu Islands called shisha. Okay, then we have Rudy. His name is a reference to Rudolph because of his red nose. Maybe, but he's a jock villager, so maybe he's also a reference to the movie movie Rudy, where it's like a football movie. I think it takes place at like Notre Dame. I watched it when I was a kid. I don't think the character Rudy actually gets to be all that great of a player. Maybe he gets to play like in one game. I need to rewatch Rudy and see what happens. What a wild throwback that is. All right, we have Shari. Okay. Her design is based on a squirrel monkey, okay? The yellow hands has been controversial in the Animal Crossing lore because the type of monkey she's based off of are apparently notoriously known for having yellow stained fur because of urine. I don't know if this is actually the case. Logan, please look into this one. Put on the screen what you found, what you think about Sherry. Thank you. Okay, then we have Sheldon, whose name and design are based off of the shell of a chestnut, as his Japanese name, Kurisu, which comes from kuri, meaning chestnut, and risu, meaning squirrel. Cool. Okay, then we have Shep. Shep's name comes from a shepherd dog. His design resembles multiple sheepdog breeds. We have Sky, whose name and appearance are based off of like sky clouds. Like you can see, like there's even a cloud on her head. Her hobbies are apparently reading, baking, and art. Then we have Sly, whose name comes from the camouflage patterning. And similarly, his Japanese name comes from the word hide, which is mostly because alligators are known to stay still in the water, so they blend in with their surroundings. Similar camouflage pattern is also seen on Camo Frog, but in this case, it's on, like an alligator. Then we got Soleil.
Soleil.
Her name comes from the French word for sun. She also requests summer-themed houses, which kind of ties into this. She's the only hamster villager that has a snooty personality. Sparrow's name and design come from a species of bird, more specifically the Eurasian tree sparrow. Also, he likes video games and working out and spends a lot of money on gym equipment. Okay, Sprinkle. Her name and design relate to ice cream, which is like a cold dessert, and she's a penguin, so it kind of makes sense. She also apparently loves ice and leaving footprints in the snow. Tammy's Japanese name Anessa comes from Ane-san, which means big sister, and is a reference to her personality. Her Happy Home designer request used to be Halloween themed, but this was actually changed in Happy Home Paradise when Jack could, be invited via Amiibo card. They had to come up with something new for Tammy, and she got demoted, I guess. Okay, Tex. His name comes from maybe tuxedo, simply because penguin's feathers kind of look like a tuxedo. His catchphrase picante is Spanish for spicy, which could mean his name is also a reference to Tex-Mex cuisine, which is, spicy. His design is likely based on the Humboldt penguin because his Japanese name, Boruto, is the Japanese pronunciation for bolt. Okay, then we got Tia. She's literally a teapot elephant. I mean, see? Her house interior requests are all based on tea as well. Okay, then we got Timbra, whose name is a pun on timber. Her design is kind of based off of a pine cone, to tell you the truth. Her Japanese name also derives from the Japanese word for pine cone as well, so they're working on something there. Also, she apparently loves stargazing. Okay, then we got Tucker, whose name comes from his tusks, but it could also maybe come from the phrase tuckering out, which is a reference to his lazy personality. His design is based off of the woolly mammoth, and Tucker is the first and only non-special villager based on an extinct animal, the others later being the dodos in Animal Crossing New Horizons. Then we got Vic, whose name and design are based on Vikings, likely. That said, his house request and Happy Home designer was originally pirate themed. Apparently he believes he's the descendant of Viking bulls, whatever that means. Okay, then we got Walt. We mentioned Walt way back at the start of the video, as he and Matilda's names reference the Australian song Walting Matilda. His name could also be a reference though to like Walt Disney, as he once designed a character called Casey the Kangaroo for a university mascot. So it's like, coming full circle, I think. Okay, we got Zell. His name's based on a gazelle. His design's likely based off of the black buck antelope. And we got Zucker, whose name comes from sucker because he's an octopus, and the German word for sugar maybe because of his outfit in New Leaf. It was like a flan tank. It was like a sugar dessert. His design is based on takoyaki, which is a popular Japanese dish made from octopus. And fun fact, that's the last villager on our list named after a product of an animal being dead directly, or food. His house requests also relate to Japanese festivals where takoyaki might be served. Okay, next up, Audie, who likely is named after the Animal Crossing grandmother, who was a lady who played Animal Crossing on Animal Crossing New Leaf and had a lot of time played, and then this video was made and it went viral. Pretty cool for Nintendo to name a character after her. Okay, we got Cephalobot, whose name's probably a mix of a cephalopod and a robot. His Japanese name and Japanese pronunciation of Geiger, which could be a reference to the famous science fiction artist H.R. Geiger. Okay, Sid has this like punk rock theme going on. He's likely named after Sid Vicious, who is a famous punk artist, and the spelling of his name could also come from like a symbol, and apparently he loves to play the drums, so it's all tied together. Dom's actually interesting. Typically, the English and Dutch names for Animal Crossing villagers are the same, but in Dutch, they changed his name to Donnie because Dom in Dutch can mean like dumb or stupid, so it wasn't really nice. Apparently, he's always daydreaming and staring at the sky, and I'm sure his name comes from dominating or domination. That's my guess. Okay, we have Ione next, whose name is derived from the name of a nymph in Greek mythology. Her design is, of course, based on the night sky, and her ears and paws actually glow in the dark. She's usually really quiet, but apparently loves to talk about constellations. Okay, we got Judy, who's mostly known for her starry eyes, and it's rumored that stardust follows her wherever she goes. Marlo is based on a stereotypical crime boss, and his name likely comes from actor Marlon Brando, who played Vito in the film Godfather. His design's also based on a mafia boss, and his official lore even mentions that he might be a part of an underground organization, but other villagers are too scared to ask. Megan, much like the villager Candy, has a candy theme. Her Japanese name is actually Kyandi, which is like a Japanese pronunciation of the English word for candy. Maybe she's like a gummy bear themed villager? Okay, we got Petrie. He's like a science little mouse dude. He's probably named after a Petri dish. The inventor of the Petri dish was Julius Richard Petrie, so you know, it's all connected here. Wait, Petrie's a female villager? Never realized that before. She apparently has a scientist theme and seems to be based on a lab mouse, which kind of makes sense. I don't think I've ever actually seen this villager when playing myself, though. And then we have Quinn, who's the only eagle villager with a big sister personality. She apparently likes fashion and taking care of her appearance, and she kind of looks like a My Little Pony character. I don't know. Then we get to Raymond, who despite only being introduced in Animal Crossing New Horizons, became so popular that people were actually paying real-world money to be able to get this villager on their island. His popularity also sparked many memes like Raymond wearing a maid dress, and there were even controversial scams in which people thought they were paying for Raymond to move to their island, but instead just paying for a chance to get to look at the character. Raymond's name in Japanese is Jaku, which means advice or counsel giver, which makes sense because of his business attire, but his name also might be a reference to Raymond James, which is the investment banking company, which is an American multinational independent investment bank and financial service. Then we have Renee, whose name is the same as another villager, but it's spelt to be like a pun on the species, like the sound a horse makes. Her Japanese name is the Japanese pronunciation of Rihanna, though, which could be a reference to the famous singer, which would make sense. Next, we have Sherb, whose name comes from sherbet, which is a frozen yogurt, which relates to the default outfit that Sherb's wearing. He loves to sleep, and his Japanese name, Reimu, comes from REM sleep, the phase of sleep associated with dreaming, or REM sleep. Shino's design resembles a no mask, which is a traditional Japanese mask with hikimayu-styled eyebrows. Her red horns also resemble a Hanya mask. The combination of these two masks' masculine and feminine features, plus her being the only female deer to have horns, has led some fans to wonder if Nintendo was implying that Shino could be transgender, non-binary, or even intersex. Then we have Tian Shang, whose name and design come from the 1592 novel Journey to the West, specifically the character known as the Monkey King, Sun Wukong, or his title, Qi Tiang Da Shang. He also wears a headpiece that's similar to depictions of the Monkey King, and he's also one of the few monkey villagers that isn't barefoot, and he claims that shoes make him run faster. Though nobody has actually tested this just yet. And then we have Sasha. He's a blue bunny that I don't know how he got his name. If you know why he got his name, please let us know. Okay, now we got to talk about the Sanrio villagers. Those were in Animal Crossing New Leaf, and then later on in an update to Animal Crossing New Horizons. When Nintendo did a big crossover with Sanrio, we got villagers based on Sanrio's brands, which is like Hello Kitty, Pom Pom Purin, Little Twin Stars, Cinema Roll, My Melody, and Keroppi. So accordingly, we have Rilla, who is like Hello Kitty themed, Marty, who's like a lazy bear cub based on Pom Pom Purin, Etole, she's a sheep based on the Little Twin Stars franchise, Chai, who's based on the Cinema Roll franchise, we got Chelsea, who's a deer based on the My Melody franchise, and Toby, who's based on the Keroppi franchise. When these villagers were released, they were in the form of these like amiibo cards that you would scan into your game, and then you could invite them to move into your town, and they were kind of hard to get for a while, and this caused like a ton of scalpers to start selling them, so these things were crazy for a little while. It was a wild time. Okay, now we've cleared every villager from Animal Crossing New Horizons, but there were still a lot of forgotten Animal Crossing villagers that haven't returned, and we did a whole video dedicated on that, but let's go over these ones also because I do think we need to talk about them a little bit. Just like where the Sanrio villagers come from, Animal Crossing New Leaf also had other villagers from different game franchises that were included in Animal Crossing as villagers, but these ones never actually returned. There were a series of Legend of Zelda characters that were introduced that all would not be reintroduced in Animal Crossing New Horizons, but there was Wolf Link, who was a smug wolf, or I guess his name was W Link instead. I think a lot of the Zelda characters were just introduced if you had special amiibo to connect to it. Nintendo was doing this whole thing to try to make amiibo even bigger than it already was back then. Then they had Medley, who was a bird. She was based on the character Medley from Wind Waker. They actually made Ganon, a pig, which makes sense based on his old appearance. And he was, of course, a cranky personality type. And then they actually had Epona, who was a peppy horse. And then for Splatoon, they did a crossover as well, adding Cece and Viche, which were squirrels based on Callie and Marie from the first Splatoon game. And they introduced Inkwell, who was a jock octopus based on, the Inkling from Splatoon. While I am surprised they didn't bring back the Nintendo crossover characters, I don't know why, I just feel extra that way about Inkwell. I felt like they could have easily just brought him alone back out of all of them. Okay, then in Happy Home Designer, they introduced Feline, who was a lazy cat villager based on the feline things from the Monster Hunter series, but he can move into your Animal Crossing New Leaf Welcome Amiibo update town. And the only other one that kind of falls into this outlier category of crossovers is Philly, which we already talked about, but she was the 7-Eleven crossover that also might be a superhero, but we're not 100% sure. And then we weren't sure if Holden should cross as a villager. He looks terrifying with his eyes, but he isn't a full villager. You could invite him to your RV, but he wouldn't actually move into your town. It was part of a company called Fueki. They're known for stationary products and making glue. Okay, then there's Champ, who was introduced in Animal Crossing Wild World and also was in City Folk, and there's a lot of speculation as to the lore behind this character. We don't need to go into whether or not this character is actually secretly Porter, even though he might actually secretly be Porter, but this character definitely was added as a replacement because Porter was removed from Animal Crossing Wild World and City Folk, so he became a villager, and then when Porter was reintroduced in Animal Crossing New Leaf, he proceeded to not exist anymore. So Champ was gone. One of the only villagers to be introduced in Wild World and City Folk, and then just be taken out later on. But there are a lot of villagers that were introduced in the first generation of Animal Crossing games that we still haven't seen come back yet. Some of them were originally not seen for a long time, but then eventually would reappear in New Leaf or even New Horizons, but a lot of them are still just missing in action. 3 of those are crossover villagers that were in Dobutsu no Mori E+, Nindori being a jock ostrich that was a part of a crossover with the Japanese magazine Nintendo Dream. He was a fan drawing and then kind of became the mascot for the magazine, and they made him into a special villager that could be summoned with an e-reader card. And then we have Meow and Bao, which was this interesting Japanese translation device you were supposed to buy, and it would apparently let you talk to your cats and dogs. I mean, not really. You're supposed to hold it up to your animal, and then whatever they said, the screen would tell you what they're saying. I don't think that it actually worked, but it was a thing. And they made 2 villagers kind of inspired by this, and they were really cool. I don't know. I kind of mourn our losses of Meow and Bao. Shinobiro also had an e-reader card, and he was exclusive to Famitsu magazine. Pierre is a great looking villager. I mean, look at him, and how do we not have him in games again? But he was bundled with some collector's edition for Dobutsu no Mori E+. His name is the French name for Peter. And then there was this villager Shukichi, whose e-reader card could bring him into your town, but you had to buy this special toy set to get him. Okay, and then there's just the regular villagers that are still missing, like Isle, who was apparently in Animal Crossing E+, or Animal Forest E+, but you could only move him into your town if you had an E card for him and a couple of these other villagers. He had a cool house, even though his house pretty much was almost identical to Ace's, except there was a different wallpaper and a different carpet. Next we have the villager Analog, who also was e-reader exclusive. And no, it's not Iggly, this is a different character, but yeah, one that never came back. Az's, on the other hand, was actually in every version of Generation 1 Animal Crossing games, but he wasn't brought back for Animal Crossing Wild World and hasn't been in any game since. But man, he looks, I don't know, kind of confident. We have Bessie, whose name is just a popular name for cows. Another Gen 1 exclusive villager. There was another chicken villager that looks like a pretty just generic chicken named Betty. Earlier in the video, we talked about Carmen the rabbit, but there actually originally was a Carmen that was a snooty mouse. Apparently, she almost was brought back in Animal Crossing City Folk, but then they decided that they were going to introduce Carmen the rabbit, and then she ended up getting scrapped. Another e-reader exclusive villager, Carrot. It's a cow carrot villager. Also, a she-cow villager with horns. Interesting. Back in Gen 1, there was Chico, who might actually be named after Chico Marx, a famous American comedian, actor, and pianist back in the first half of the 20th century. We have Chuck, who was a bull villager. His name might come from a ground chuck or a chuck roast. Another, classic case of food villagers. Apparently there was traces of his data found for the Welcome Amiibo update for New Leaf, but he never was actually added back into the game, so maybe he got cut. There was a pink hippo villager named Clara, who only showed up in Animal Forest E+ if you had her E card. I don't think she ever ended up coming back because she looks really similar to Biddy, but that doesn't explain why Cupcake ultimately was cut in later Animal Crossing games, only appearing in the first generation of games. She was a snooty cub villager. There was Dozer, who was a lazy bear villager, and his name likely is like a reference on being sleepy. I guess that makes sense. And then there's Alina, whose name starts with EL, like elephant. And then she also has a bindi on her forehead, meaning that, you know, she might be inspired by Hinduism, as elephants play like a major role in like Hindu religious symbols. There's Emerald, who was a green frog. I think they turned him into the froggy chair. There was the villager Flash, who had a hat. Flossie was this orange mouse. I think maybe the name comes from like dental floss, and she has like this one single buck tooth coming like out of her face. And then there was a villager called Fruity. I don't know, maybe bro likes eating fruit. All right, there was Jen, the jock sheep villager. Only in Animal Crossing E+, you had to have the e-reader card. There was Hambo, a pig named after Ham, or Rambo. I'm not sure. We have Hank and Hector, both villagers that would never come back, that were, I don't know, colorful chicken. There was this koala named Huggy, and I guess the name probably comes from the fact that baby koalas like hug onto the backs of their mothers. So I guess that's where Huggy got her name. Now Iggy, on the other hand, looks like he's seen some stuff. He's been through it. He was never brought back into Animal Crossing again, and you know what? I don't know. I kind of understand why. I just feel bad for him looking at him. I don't know. Okay, we got Jane, who was recolored between Animal Crossing games based on the Japanese and Western releases, but she's likely named after Tarzan and Jane, I think. I feel like out of some of the cut villagers, Joe looks pretty cool. I mean, look at him. He's just chilling, but he never came back. Jubei was a lion villager, also kind of hidden behind a special Yu-Gi-Oh card. I mean, e-reader card. Then there was a villager named Kit, who looks like Conker, but he's not. Kit's likely named after what a baby squirrel is called. And then there was Koharu, who was a kangaroo villager that never got an English name. But while the kangaroo mystery is rampant in Animal Crossing, we actually know what her baby's name is, which is something interesting. Usually the babies are never addressed, but in a letter you could get through the e-reader system. We know that her child's named Hiyori, but I mean, that still doesn't explain anything. Why do these kids never have a personality or story or anything going on with them? We still don't know. Okay, then there's Lay, another villager I'm surprised didn't come back. Her name probably comes from to lay an egg. Get it? There's Liz, who probably has the name come from lizard, even if she's an alligator. All right, this is interesting. There were 2 Lulu villagers. Neither of them came back. A rare villager that uses a space in their name, Madame Rosa, was actually a villager for a while, and she's gone too. Marcy was a kangaroo that was cut, not to be confused with Marcy, another kangaroo villager. Most likely her name was based on marsupial, which is what a kangaroo is. There was a dog named Mesa. He looked like this. There's Megumi, who was this pink dog, whose name actually translates to Grace in English. There was Nosegay, a female anteater villager that hasn't come back yet. Her name's a play on her nose. There was Otis. He was a bird. He probably ate oats, hence his name. There was Oxford. He was a bull. He was likely named after an ox. There was Patricia, a yellow rhino villager who had a really cool horn. Like, look at that. What is going on here? Okay, there was Penny, who was this mouse villager, and apparently people speculate her name comes from the fact that she looks like a penny. I don't know if I see it. Maybe. There was Petunia, who is maybe named after the flower. I don't know. It could be a popular cow name. But also, her catchphrase used to be moo la la, like a play on ooh la la, and I just really like that energy. Oh my god, what is this? Pig leg? This is terrifying. I don't even know what I'm looking at this point. He was apparently a jock pig with an eye injury. I don't know. Maybe his name comes on a play of like peg leg, but it says pig leg. So maybe he's like a pirate villager. Why hasn't he come back yet? This would look great in my city where I try to make, you know, some scary looking villagers live there. So far I have like Cat, Coco, Marlo, you know, the usual suspects. I feel like he would fit in really well. Now, it's not too often that there's villagers that are related to one another, but there was a villager named Poco in Animal Forest E+, and in his Japanese e-reader card, it said that he was Ike's son. So there's some father-son villagers here. Then there's Quetzal, who likely is named after the Quetzal bird, native to the rainforest regions of Central America. Some fans have pointed out that he has native Mexican-style war paint on his face. And his name could come from like Quetzalcoatl, which is like a bird-like Aztec god of wisdom. There's Rhoda, a blue chicken. Her name likely is from the Rhode Island Red breed of chicken. I don't know. There's Rolo. He exists. Okay, there was this pig villager named Sue E, another villager with a space in the name. Her name could come from the taxonomical family Suidae, which includes pigs. I don't know anything about taxonomical families. Instead, look at this frog sticking their tongue out. This was Sunny, a normal frog villager. I don't know. Okay, so Sven's been missing for many Animal Crossing games. I hope he's not dead. Where's Sven? All right, there's Taro, whose name might be a play on purple yams, which are known as purple taro, and he's purple. He's interesting because he's the only wolf villager that hasn't come back in a future Animal Crossing game, besides W Link. But another one was Tiara. She was a rhino that never returned. I still can't believe they got rid of twerp. Probably a play on the sound that birds make. But look at him. He's like angry or something. He would have been great on my island. Okay, then we got Weldon, who is a cranky bull villager. His name might actually be a play on, oh boy, well done, like how some people like their steaks cooked. Then there's Woolio, my number one pick for a villager that needs to come back. His name's a play on wool and maybe Coolio, because he's Woolio. I don't know. Why isn't he back? I'm very disappointed in this one not returning. Sadly, he used to be on the album art cover for KK Parade, but in later games he was replaced with Frida. So it's even sadder. And last, but certainly not least, I think, is Yodel. He's a lazy gorilla villager. His name probably comes from, I don't know, yodeling? I don't know. I don't know why his name's Yodel. Also, I don't know what's going on with his forehead. But he is the last villager on our list. So he never came back, to no one's surprise. And that's it. We actually made it through every single villager in the Animal Crossing franchise. This video took months to make, so a subscription really does go a long way in like being like, hey, I appreciate that you made this long video. Thank you. You don't have to subscribe. That's fine too. But I mean, if you want to see more crazy stuff like this, you know, maybe. Also, huge thanks to Kat the Lad for being a primary researcher for this video, and huge thanks to Logan, Sauce, and Luke for helping me edit this video. Also, guys, check out this video on the lore behind all of the special villagers. What's their story like? The video's an hour long. It's pretty good.